Jay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Grassroots. It is Tuesday, the 25th of March. There are 281 days left in 2025. This is the work session of Pitkin County, Colorado. First up at 1 p.m. is Levi Borst, which is a legislative update. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm Levi Borst, Management Analyst here at Pitkin County. And in the packet, I provided a pretty exhaustive list of bills and different positions that some of our member organizations have taken. And I don't really want to spend too much time going through the entire length of that bill. I've limited this discussion just to a few things where I think we can really have some impact, have some opportunity for testimony, and then leave a little bit of time for commissioner questions or updates or anything that you all have on your radar that we should fold into our next update in a couple weeks. So today is day 75 of the legislative session, started January 8th, and as of last night at the end of session, we had 511 bills introduced so far. I think last year we ended up somewhere around 730, without being sure which resolutions count into that number or whatever. So we're doing okay so far, and with the late bill process being what it is, hopefully we don't get too out of hand. So far, the real conversation is hinging around the budget. Depending on the projection that you listen to, $1.2 to $1.3 billion shortfall for the coming year. And it's currently said to be somewhere 20 million to 188 million after the various adjustments and reallocations. So I'm not sure what kind of shell game we're playing with the money, but some kind of money. Some kind of shell game, excuse me. And the session ends on May 7th. So a quick JBC update, the Joint Budget Committee. And these are some increases in spending that they've approved. Of course, it's all a bit of rumor because none of this has been introduced in the long bill just yet. So they've approved an increase in spending for the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, CCAP, rejected a decrease in child welfare, approved the SNAP program increase by 4.2 million, an increase of 33 million for county admin of Medicaid, improvement to the CBMS. And the obvious question is, where's the money come from? And we're all kind of waiting with bated breath. Supposedly the long bill gets introduced March 31st. It's kind of anyone's guess. It's been delayed quite a few times. And there's some speculation that that's not only to work through the mechanics of the shortfall, but also to kind of quell any organized support because everybody's going to be upset about their various program being cut. So we saw the teachers organize. I'm sure we'll see some other groups organize looking to lobby to preserve their funding. So jumping right into bills, this is a rehash from open discussion last week. I think we met on Tuesday. And there was a bill concerning automated permits for clean energy technology. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because this is sort of as it was introduced. It required all local governments to implement an automated solar approval process. Software problems, integration problems, cost to local governments problems, cost to customer problems. It was pretty poorly constructed, even though we might support the idea. So again, just the second part of that discussion, this was where it stood as of Wednesday, and definitely to this board's credit and a lot of other local governments' credit, we rallied pretty impressive opposition. And this was in committee last week, and Commissioner Woodruff, thank you so much for testifying last week. I don't remember how many panels there were in opposition, 8 or 10 or something like that. And that resulted in a strike below amendment that effectively gutted that bill, which was awesome. It took out everything that we didn't like, and all that remained were some technical cleanups to the permissive bill from last year and the grant program, which allowed for funding for people who did choose to implement the automated software. So that's all that remains, and that's a great thing. So now CCAT is in support, and a lot of our other member organizations haven't had time to change their positions. So I guess I would suggest while we're here, We're currently still in an oppose because we haven't met since last week. So I would recommend that at the very least we go to a monitor, and I think we can even support this now that there's absolutely no teeth that affect anything we're doing here. But I think we need to remove the opposition.
So what do we need to actually do that? We just need, hi,
Hi.
just a thumbs up or,
Yeah, just a general thumbs up or a conversation if there's any concerns about
I'd be
doing that.
willing to go with your recommendation on that, but Jeffrey's spent more time on it. What's your feeling?
I'm comfortable with monitor.
I'm okay with it. We talked about it a lot at CCI.
Monitor
Not this
or,
last session, but the one
monitor or
before.
support?
I would stay with monitor. I'm not,
I'm okay with support.
sorry.
I mean, I think it's supposed to be, pro-environmental. It just had some poorly written parts to it, and so I would go with support.
Well, can we monitor it and then switch to support in a week and still be okay? Or do you think we'll,
I think that's fine. I'm back with you not next week, but the week following.
and we
so
still have time?
We can
so
revisit
we-
then.
What do you think? Monitor?
Yeah,
support?
never hurts. I mean, we'll just see what happens between now and then, and we can always change our mind. They do, so we can.
I can switch to monitor then, if that helps move it forward. I appreciate Francie's support.
Yeah, I think more than anything, I'd really like to remove our opposition. What we go to is less important, but we
Right.
really worked hard to get the bad things out of this bill, so I'd like to show our support for the legislators in listening to us.
Yeah, I think when we've asked for things to be changed and they change them, and then if we don't respond, that is not good for our credibility.
Agreed.
Okay.
The next bill that's pretty interesting is the county lodging tax expansion bill, 1247. And this was largely a front range bill, but it's aimed to create parity between county and municipalities' authority to go to the voters and ask for a lodging tax. And currently, counties in Colorado are limited at 2%, and I think munis are at 6%. And so this bill was aimed at just leveling that playing field. As it went through the House, of course, you'd imagine the usual opposition being the STR industry, realtors, commercial hotels, things like that. It was amended down to a 5% cap and got through the House, and it's headed back to the Senate. So Senator Roberts is rumored to be thinking about amending it back to 6%. And I think there are a lot of counties who feel the difference between 5% and 6% is the point where the juice is worth the squeeze in terms of going to their voters and asking for this kind of measure. I think this is probably something I see as more like a symbolic support from us, because I don't know that we have a huge
We have
footprint
like
here.
2 or 3.
If it went to all the STRs in unincorporated, the Redstone Hotel, the Redstone Inn and the Castle, and then maybe the Inn at Aspen.
City.
And
I think it's city.
either way, it's not a lot. There's some discussion. Clear Creek has lobbied for an amendment that would essentially overlap municipalities with this. And it hasn't been introduced, so it's just kind of rumor. But if that were to happen, say the city of Aspen has a 2% lodging tax, and we went to the voters and asked for 4%, could we do their 2 plus our 4 and still collect some of that tax? I think that was met with pretty adamant opposition in the discussions we've had at CCI and CCAT. I don't know how much traction there is to that, but it would sure increase the amount of revenue we could receive. I feel like the city gets somewhere, I don't want to be wrong, somewhere around 30 million over 5 or 6 years, so it's $5 to $6 million a year they
And
get out
most
of
of it
that.
goes to, say, Accra, and
I can't hear you, Patty. What'd you say?
it goes to Accra. Yeah, that's how, one of their funding sources. But we did discuss this briefly at Northwest COG meeting on Thursday, and everybody was pretty much in agreement with that 5 was a better idea. Rather than tripling the number from 2% to 6, 5 kind of was a little softer. Jeffrey and I were both at that meeting. We didn't really say much because the impact for our county is minimal. And so I think for Senator Roberts to want to bring it back up, he may lose support.
There's concern that when it goes back to the House after the Senate, that if it goes from 5 to 6, we'll lose the votes we need to
Yeah.
get it through. So I've heard that as well.
And
So I-
there's a lot of counties, well, that we heard from in Northwest Cog who have a lot of revenue from lodging tax that were really supportive of at least being allowed to bring it back to their voters. Doesn't mean they have to go to 5 or 6, whatever. Means they could go up to a maximum of. And they were supportive of being able to do that if they chose to take it to their voters.
So our lodging tax income in the county is pretty low?
Well, because we don't have very many
don't-
lodges.
Yeah.
And we don't have one.
We've never implemented a lodging tax. We do collect sales tax on lodging, but because we have not, we really don't have lodging in unincorporated Pickens County, that's, I think, justified us going out for that
Just
tax.
Redstone, really, right?
It's not a lodge,
They
it's not
will.
taxes, classified as lodge, it's a guest, dude ranch or guest ranch or something, yeah. Yeah, I believe so.
And so I think,
Basalt.
maybe.
We have some in Basalt, don't we?
It's not
The
an
wrong side.
It's
unincorporated.
in, it's in,
Wrong side of
yeah, it's
Basalt.
in
No, it's
Basalt.
not. Well, yes, wrong side of Basalt. There's some on the Pickens County side, but if there's already a lodging tax within the municipal
We knew,
boundary.
oh, I see,
yeah.
then you can't do it. Uh-huh.
And so this bill was part of kind of a package of county revenue diversification ideas that we started with at the beginning of session. So we had county lodging tax, excise tax authority, and like a vacancy tax or second homeowner tax or something like that. And this is the only one that's been introduced so far. So I really like the idea of the legislature giving counties some tools to diversify our revenue streams. So I think with all the support we've seen through CCAT and CCI and a lot of our like-minded counties, I'd recommend that we support this. I don't know how much we have to offer in county applicable testimony, but I think it's really valuable that we show support for county autonomy and asking our voters to diversify revenue sources.
It would be pretty significant in Summit and Eagle, I would think.
Huge.
Except most of their lodges are in incorporated towns or cities.
Beaver Creek.
Yeah.
But I think we should, I think that's a really good point. Doesn't really impact us, but it is a good opportunity for the other counties that we work closely with.
And it was originally set for committee April 2nd, and it's kind of bouncing around. The last I looked, I think this morning, now it's set for tomorrow.
You're looking for testimony when it's in committee?
Well, I wrote the testimony part last week before it got moved up until tomorrow, into committee tomorrow, but I don't know if we'll get asked or not. I think we've got CCAT and CCI representatives already kind of speaking on our behalf through the organizations, but just like to make that, put that out there as a possible thing that we might get asked to do.
Great. Thumbs up from me.
Wow. This is Greg's favorite bill, the what is a vulnerable road user?
They're all vulnerable out there.
So as defined in the bill, it's any person using like a public roadway that's not, I think the word is in a protective shell or something like that. So if you're not in a car or a truck, or so if you're out rollerblading or on your unicycle, then you're not in your shell. So
Your helmet doesn't count?
your helmet doesn't count. So this is the new bill, the last one that CC4CA introduced. They PI'd at the sponsor's request and introduced this one instead. And it's an enterprise bill, and it would tax insurance policies issued in Colorado, or not tax, it would fee insurance policies. $1.75 in 2025 and $3.50 in 2026
Per what?
per insurance policy.
$1.75 per policy?
Mhm.
Okay.
So it's not a huge amount of money. But if you think about the amount of vehicles in the state, fleet vehicles, rentals, there is no local government exemption, so we would also pay into this. The theory is that 80% of those funds collected go to vulnerable road user projects, be that bike lanes or overpasses, underpasses, some kind of traffic safety improvements. And then the remaining 20% would go to wildlife crash prevention, so maybe those ramps that the animals can get out of the highway,
Fences.
or fences or underpasses or whatever that may be.
Right? I think it's
And-
great to see it.
Everybody kind of admits it's not enough. Because I think they're very optimistic that between this fee and being able to take private donations, they'll reach that enterprise limit of $100 million over 5 years. Of course, what does a roundabout cost? 15 million, I don't make up a number, but $100 million doesn't go as far as it used to. So
No, it doesn't.
I have a question. Who's administering this? So when we register vehicles here, we have another issue, we have to collect money. Is there an administrative issue, cost?
I
Generally,
don't
when
know
you
off
do
the top
this,
of my
you
head.
get 2% administrative coverage, but I don't think there's anything in this that would,
Then go to CDOT, but they're not.
oh, CDOT's not part of it, would be Department of Revenue. I would think
I'll
it'd
have to
go
get
back
to you. I don't know
I
what
think
the
that's
admin
who
cost
handles
is.
vehicle registrations. Isn't it,
This is
John?
insurance, so not
No,
registration.
but you'd be collecting it when you register your vehicle. So it'd be our clerk's office.
When you
I
insure
think
it.
it's different. I think this is a surcharge on your insurance bill, and so the insurance company would be remitting to,
So the insurance company would add it,
Department of
and then they
Revenue.
would,
and whether there's a charge in there, I'm not sure. An
I'd have-
additional.
so,
I didn't remember
so the
reading
insurance
one.
companies would be responsible for remitting the monies they collect to somebody in the state. And somebody in the state is,
Then distributing that to accomplish the goals
how
of
do
the bill.
insurance
yeah.
companies feel about that? That's
Whose
an-
goals?
Oh, the insurance companies are registered
CDOT?
against it.
I think CDOT would
Against
be in
it?
charge of this one, yeah.
Yeah, they want to keep the money.
And this would be implemented through CDOT, is that?
I think so.
through CDOT?
How could it not be? I mean,
And then they'd issue payments basically based on grant applications that we would submit if we had projects. It's said to be broken up by region because there was some pretty vocal concern that all of our monies would be used on Front Range projects and people who insure their vehicles here wouldn't see projects here. So
So
supposedly broken up by region.
If we were gonna do a bike lane on a county road, it wouldn't be covered if CDOT's handling it.
I think we
John,
can
right?
still apply to the grant. I don't think it has to be on a state highway.
So CDOT would, I'm still confused as to who's on first and who's on second here, so.
I'll have to get
John,
back
if
to
we
you on the
applied for
admin.
it for a county road for a bike lane, CDOT doesn't do that.
Well, if it's they wouldn't do the project, but if it's a grant program, they may be able to give grant dollars for a county road.
And they actually wrote in that it can be a private enterprise that can apply to the grant also. So we can use grant dollars to pay a contractor or, I don't know, if like a homeowners association or a school district or somebody else like that.
Be interesting because CDOT's getting their budget hit pretty hard. It's the plan right now. And this would not really provide CDOT technically any more money. It would backfill maybe some other projects, but if CDOT has to administer a grant, it could be then coming out of CDOT's already limited pocketbook.
I'd have to check the fiscal
Yeah.
note, but this is of course enterprise, so it wouldn't come out of CDOT's budget aside from the administration if that's what
Yeah.
it is.
We'll learn more.
But this is another I recommend that we support. I think these projects are so terribly underfunded and $1.75 and $3.50 is,
I'm
Not
not
terrible.
concerned about that. I'm just concerned about the unintended or unthought of consequences of who's going to administer and how, and what's the cost going to be to do that. So
I'll
the
come back to
fiscal
you with
note,
that.
thank you. Thanks, that's all I need, thanks.
You need a thumbs up on that?
I got it.
We don't thumbs up, we have to be very careful taking votes in work sessions these days.
Need a twitch of an eyelash?
just winks. Left eye is yes, right eye is no.
I'll give Rosa the high sign and then she can communicate to you later.
Got it.
We're not actually passing it, so it hardly matters.
Right.
So there are a couple of homeowners insurance kind of wildfire related bills that have come out. And I'm sure everybody in the room knows more about these than I do. They're really, especially this one is kind of complicated. It's looking to fund a couple different enterprise funds Similarly, on an insurance premium, 1.5% fee on the premium, so not the value of the policy. And let's see if I can get through this. Establish a state reinsurance program to help insurers cover wildfire losses. I think the idea being that in a big event, it can essentially bankrupt insurance companies. They won't have the money to pay out those claims. It addresses rate regulation, so limit excessive premium increases via minimum loss of 75%. So as I understand it, if you have $100 and you pay out $75, then that's your loss percentage. And so this would subsidize that so insurance companies can continue to operate. Requires insurance to adjust rates down if they're found to be making excessive profits. And I didn't actually find a definition of excessive profits, but I assume if that minimum loss goes down to 1, then maybe that's deemed excessive profits, and then the rates should come down as a result. Adds some insurer responsibilities, market participation. Coverage statewide is pretty great. I think we're starting to struggle with that here.
That's the best point of that whole thing.
There's a little duplicate. Must reduce premiums if they receive reinsurance from the state, which seems fair. Utility protections in wildfire disasters. Prevents utilities from passing the cost of catastrophe bonds on to customers. I think is also a pretty good thing. And protects utilities from financial liability if wildfire disaster occurs. So summary, because that's clear as mud, I think that bill does 7 or 8 different things. So it encourages insurers to stay in Colorado, stabilizes homeowner insurance costs, prevents excessive insurance rate hikes, ensures that wildfire affected homeowners receive timely insurance payments. So I think these are a multitude of lessons we've learned from the last few major fire events. And these all came from the Commissioner of Insurance, Mike Connolly? Mike?
Sounds right. Yeah, yeah.
So these are 2 bills that came directly out of their office. So I tell myself that they're fairly nonpartisan and fairly grounded in what they've seen across the insurance industry with the last few events.
He presented most of this outline probably 6 months ago, so it's good to see it introduced.
Yeah, he
So-
talked about it at CCAT 2 or 3 months ago.
That's when it is. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure he's talked all over about it,
Yeah.
but now that they're actually introduced, we have something we can put our hands around, and I think it's a really interesting concept. So it was just introduced a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and very few positions are listed on the Secretary of State aside from monitor positions. So I think we're kind of not entirely sure what's going to happen in committee, what kind of amendments we're going to see, and where everybody falls on which side of the fence on that one. So here, I love the concept and I really hope we can support it, but at least for now in the preliminary stages, I just think it's probably best to stay in a monitor till we kind of better understand the consequences of what all these things might do, because we probably haven't seen all the sides to this just yet.
Yeah,
So-
at first glance, it looks like so many things are in conflict with each other, of the various facets of it are in opposition or going to interfere. It's a perfect, I can see how it's exactly what we want. It's gonna be really hard to get.
Yeah, and if all these things sound kind of too good to be true, they
Yeah,
might be, so.
Well, the catch-22 is that the insurance industry has lost money in the state of Colorado 7 of the past 10 years. So
Right.
the likelihood that the insurance industry will accept this as drafted on your slides is probably fairly low. So, but we would encourage monitor.
Yeah, I think this is one to really keep under a close watch and just make sure that we don't get surprised by something, or if it turns into something that could really, affect availability and affordability of insurance, especially here and places where we're all kind of in the wildfire area. I think it'd be great if we could get there, but I'm not ready to do that yet.
And what was the waiver? Can you go back a slide to the waiver of liability for utility companies?
Well, I'm not sure how it
It just
protects
says
utilities.
protects them. That's interesting, because I know that's been a big issue, especially in the California fires.
If they start it.
Yeah, but it doesn't, yeah.
Well, in Colorado, we proactively manage the network and turn off the network in case of wildfire. So the utility companies are proactively shutting down service. So they do not want to
Well,
be.
they're trying to proactively shut down service. Sometimes they shut it down after the fire started. So, but I just think that's interesting and probably how they, or maybe, who knows, got the utility companies to not adamantly oppose this. Yeah, I think we should definitely monitor it and see where it goes and what we might need to do if things change.
I just made a note to figure out how this bill would protect utilities from liability. 'Cause it's a great point. I'm curious to know more about that.
So if you need utility contacts, let us know.
Okay, I do.
Okay.
And the second wildfire bill, risk model use in property insurance policies. I think this is probably makes a little more sense to me on its surface. Requires insurers to use wildfire and or catastrophe models. Insurers have to share the models they use with the Commissioner of Insurance and the public. Requires the inclusion of many factors to be included in those models: wildfire history, mitigation efforts, proximity to fire-prone areas. And the insurers are required to notify homeowners of the specific inputs used to determine availability and affordability. I don't see a lot of downside to this. I think the insurance companies could really help everybody out with a little more transparency about how rates are determined and what homeowners can do to lower their individual rates, what we as communities can do to lower our rates. So I think this one is a lot more cut and dry to me. It passed through the House, its third reading, and it's not set in the Senate yet. And we've got CCAT, CC4CA already in support, and this one I would recommend we support as it's drafted. And if we get asked for testimony, I think just based on our geography, I think we probably have a lot to offer in terms of talking about insurance costs and wildfire risks and mitigation efforts.
I would have to believe that at some level, insurance company already look at some of these issues. It'd just be a matter of kind of more formal recognition of them looking, because they probably look at where they can raise rates and how high, and where they probably can't raise rates but still do, but how high.
That's so cynical.
Yeah, so. Because it's been a huge issue, as we know, and it's not just here, it's across the country, actually.
Yeah, I think the 3 layers or 4 layers of different mitigation efforts that we really like insurance companies to consider, right? If there are statewide mitigation efforts, there are community-wide mitigation efforts, and then the individual homeowners mitigation efforts. And I think it'd be really valuable if you told me, hey, you can lower your insurance by doing A, B, C. I'd be out there doing it. So I think the
Unless it means
transfer-
cutting down that beautiful tree.
Well, maybe. How much money are we talking about for
And
that?
there's a guy out there trying to put his ballot in the box. Okay, he read it and he was walking away. It's funny watching him lift up the sign
So a
that
couple-
says, "Don't
couple
put your
federal-
ballot here."
Just a couple federal concepts to talk about. We talked about the tax exempt bond status for local government bonds. We talked about this on Wednesday. I just wanted to circle back to see if there's any more information we can provide or any other actions that the board has on their radar of how we can advocate for preserving that tax exempt status. We talked a little bit this morning, and we talk about the rate potentially going from 4.1 to 6% on municipal bonds. And John mentioned tariffs on building materials, potentially tariffs on services if they originate outside of the country. And we've got a couple kind of minor infrastructure projects we might see in the county, so
Just a little one.
yeah, I'll let John talk more about that if he's got more to add.
No, I think we're seeing that between financing and tariff impacts, that the overall cost of these major infrastructure projects could increase significantly. Building materials alone, if they're not able to be sourced from the U.S., could be up 25% or more. The additional cost, when you look at a 200 basis point increase in financing costs, is very significant in terms of what we'd be able to finance. So we'd feel pressure on both the expenditure side and then our ability to finance dollars on the revenue side for the project. So it does provide a significant squeeze potentially for us on our major infrastructure projects that we're going to have to track, and also need to make sure that our policymakers are aware of in DC.
Oh, can I? It was
Buddy.
briefly talked about at COG, just briefly. It's talked about across the country big time. It was a hot topic at the National Association of Counties meeting, hot topic from every party, every side about this. It would be interesting to see how the federal administration, where they choose to go with this, because it's going to affect every side of the voting population across this country. And it'll be interesting to see what decision they make. So I definitely think, I don't know what we can do at a statewide level, and then our state legislature, but other than keep an eye on where things are going on the federal level, which NACO is doing, and I'll keep an eye on that, where they decide to go. It's I can send off a thing saying, please send us any updates so that you hear. I'll contact somebody at NACO, or have you. We'll figure it out.
Great. More good news. One of the most recent executive orders that came from the current administration, Unleashing American Energy, gave some direction for the Council on Environmental Quality to remove the existing NEPA implementation rules. I just learned about this morning, so I've been trying to get caught up. It seems as though with that executive order, there was some question as to whether or not CEQ had the legal authority to implement NEPA rules across these other various federal agencies that issue permitting for things like energy development on federal lands. So as part of this directive, the guidance was issued to each individual agency that they revise their specific NEPA type requirements within 12 months, essentially in the spirit of making permits go faster.
Also, big topic at NACO, huge. I didn't now. It says comments due 2 days from now. Yeah, those were the hot meetings to go to, was the discussions on NEPA and the CEQ, the Council on Environmental Quality. It's a guideline that I think was signed into law by Clinton. It goes back.
I think it was like,
Bush?
the original one was maybe 50 some years ago.
Oh, but the other one, there was another one with the CEQ to oversee. Yeah, it's very,
91?
had never even heard of that with NEPA, but they're the ones, CEQ kind of oversees the NEPA process. And so that's being challenged as to whether or not CEQ should even exist anymore to oversee NEPA. So we need to, I don't know what kind of comments, without knowing exactly what the executive order says specifically.
Well, the executive order is pretty tedious to read.
Really?
It took me like 90 minutes of different water breaks to get through it this morning. But I think there's nothing that says the individual agencies can't use the same guidelines as they were using before, but there's nothing that says they have to. So they could really kind of develop their own approvals.
And this is at the federal level.
Right.
They're gonna all follow what we probably don't want to see followed.
That's the risk. That's definitely the risk.
So, yeah.
I've seen a few kind of model, I don't want to say model comments, but some comments that really touch on a lot of different angles of this. I'd be happy to share with the board if that gives some direction on some of the various points of concern that certainly I hadn't thought of. So that kind of gets us started. And apologies, I just learned of this morning, but comments are due in a couple days.
Yeah, when I was back at NACO, the executive order obviously had not been executed. I think we should submit a letter of concern stating just pretty, across the board, just pretty much saying that we believe that the guidance provided by the CEQ should remain in effect as it has been as far as governing the implementation of NEPA. Something like that, rather than strip it, because we know it'll be stripped and who knows what'll happen with our public lands especially, and natural resource extraction issues.
I'll add a link to this that has that model draft letter, and then share this presentation with y'all, and you can.
Because I know, but if we have to submit comments in 2 days.
Yeah,
we
and
need
the Federal Register link that I have is where you can go to do that. So I think if you can
Okay.
agree on a letter to submit, it should be pretty.
If the board
painless.
wants to do
Yeah, I
just
think
some
we
kind of
should.
broad letter, broad-based.
I think we should also just express, virtually everyone has expressed frustration with NEPA. It doesn't matter who you are, if NEPA's a difficult thing, but to completely gut it is really short-sighted. And so, yes, there probably are efficiencies. I in meetings over the last few years, have advocated that we have like an ombudsman who can help us navigate NEPA more easily. Something like that, just to help streamline it, but that doesn't mean gut it and throw out the protections. It was created in January 1st, 1970 by Richard Nixon.
It was
And
Nixon who
CEQ
signed
was
it.
at the same time.
The problem too, just real quick, Francie, the problem too is that if every agency can do their own thing, that's gonna even confuse the process
yeah.
even more. So you have the Department of Energy doing one thing, the Department of Natural Resources doing another, Department of Ag over here. Who knows who's, again, who's on first and who's on second, but thanks, Francie.
I was going to say that NEPA was designed with the correct intentions, and I would hate to see it disappear because it prevents development on public lands, and maybe it slows it down. So I'm not sure that slowing it down is a terrible thing. You could talk to our community development office about that. But I would fight for NEPA even if it meant slow processes. So that's my take on it.
Great. I'll add the template letter and then share this with you this afternoon and go from there.
We could bring it forward in open discussion tomorrow. Is that okay, Jeff?
That'd be
since
great. Thank you, Patty. And I'm happy to share, we have some notes also from Northwest COG regarding 1041 and protection of federal land that we also discussed with the attorney
Barbara
at
Green.
Northwest COG, Barbara Green.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Which would, we can, but that would be separate from this, but that's also something we needed. And I copied out your notes, so I have them in front of me.
And then we've got about 5 minutes left in my 45. If there's any topics that is on any of your all's minds.
Patty.
Just a general
Francie.
statement in going through all of these great documents that you
Yeah.
provided. I made notes on federal involvement on bills that use the words you're not supposed to use anymore, like diversity, equity, women, air quality, all of those things. So it's my understanding that on a federal level, they're using artificial intelligence to scan contracts and documents and legislation across the country to see what use of words might be out there. And there's a lot of bills in here that use the words that apparently are no longer supposed to be used. And so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out at the end of the day.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that packet. It was amazing. I read it on the airplane yesterday, kept me very entertained.
Stayed
Gave me a
awake.
chance to read every bill a little bit. But you did a really nice job for that. And thanks for all the coverage you're doing for us.
Great, thank you. Awesome.
Last minute, any bills we must read cover to cover, like 1056 or anything else that's the hot button for you?
Remind me the bill title of 1056. I'm not quite.
I made that
together.
one up.
Okay.
1056, I think, actually was telecom, or 1096, sorry, was telecom. Was residential solar. Anything else hot button that you are looking for
I'm just
testimony or anything else in the next couple days?
not currently. I don't think there's anything in the next couple of days, unless we want to get involved with the property tax or the lodging tax.
Lodging
But I
tax.
think we're pretty well represented through member organizations.
Right.
And then I think it probably will get spicy in the next few weeks as some of these bills start to finally start moving.
We like spicy.
One thing I would touch on, I forget the name of the bill. It was, we spoke about it a little bit. It's about the expansion of the idea of limiting our ability to limit growth. If you remember House Bill 1255 a couple of years ago, there's a bill out there that just does a couple of technical additions to that. And so on its surface, you know, counties shall not limit growth. It looks bad, but I think it just changes two pieces of that bill to where we can't discriminate based on type of housing. So condos, yes, apartments, no, kind of a technical cleanup. And then the second piece being, if there's any kind of a land donation involved in some sort of development, there's a provision that adds a developer's ability to pay a fee instead of donating land if part of that land's not usable for a public purpose. So instead of donating some land to build a park or an athletic field, if it's just a swamp, then they're allowed to essentially buy the credits of that land donation. So nothing in that bill that concerned me, but I know land use is always something we're always paying attention to. So if you see that come up, that's how I read that bill.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'll just keep watching.
Thank you so much.
You
I
be back in
did-
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
I did have, just a side note, if you don't mind.
Please.
I asked Levi to maybe help us keep an eye on some federal bills, like the Shred Act and CORE, to see, and if anything new comes out. We do get contacts from our senator's office. I don't know if Congressman Hurd has been as good about that, letting us know bills that might be coming out at a federal level that may be of interest to us or impact. So if we could have Levi just kind of keep an eye on those for us, if that's okay with the board. I don't want to give him
Please.
more work than he's already burdened with,
Sounds great.
but just so we can, because we've got a lot going on at the federal level that will impact us.
Excellent. Levi, thank you.
3 minutes early.
Excellent.
Well done, thanks.
Perfecto.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
We'll see you in a fortnight.
Is that what 2
No, I'll
weeks
probably
is?
see him in a couple hours
All will be
upstairs.
different.
Thank you.
Would the Emma Fields please take center stage?
Do we have? Hi, Tom. Do we have anybody from Emma Fields here?
Chris is here.
Oh, Chris, I didn't see you. Chris is hiding.
Tom is here.
It's the co-op hat that kind of throws you. No, you can wear it. You
Leave it,
can
leave
wear
it
it,
on,
Chris.
leave it on.
Chris, we like the advertisement. It's good.
Hi, Leslie. I didn't know we were seeing you.
I just wanted to,
Miss Emma Fields.
do you have to like tee this up or anything?
Leslie Lamont, Senior Community Planner, Community Development. Chris Bendon Adams, and Tom with Environmental Health. Thank you for joining us. Emma Fields, not so annual review.
Correct. Correct. So, end of February was a deadline that the BoCC put in the resolution in January as part of the 2025 annual review. And that deadline was for the applicant to get the noise mitigation installed and then for it to be tested. And so everything was installed, and then we went out on February 24th. February 28th, I believe it was February 28th was the deadline. So we went out there on February 24th. And so I felt it was important to bring this back to you as an update. So you knew, that the sound mitigation had been implemented, and we attempted to test it. And it didn't quite work. We couldn't get the chiller on. It was too cold.
It was too chilly
For the chiller. Yes. And Jared Day, he thought he could override the program and automatically turn it on. So the point was to have all systems on and test and see how effective the mitigation was. And like I said in my memo, and as Stuart McGregor in his report, which was attached to your memo, said that we noted that all items were in place, but we could only test the 2 exhaust fans. We could not test the chiller. And because it was getting late, we decided, we tested from the property boundary of Emma Fields. Michael Murrison was there, but we did not go into Michael's home because it was a school night and it was now getting to be like 9:15. So while we were all standing there, we said, hey, you know, we got to come back. They're required to come back in August and test everything in August, just like everything was tested last August. They're required to do that test, add those results into their 2026 annual report. That will go to you. But while we were all standing there, we said, you know, since we've done some of this testing, we think it would be important to redo the test as soon as we can in like tonight would probably be perfect when it's warm enough and the chiller could go on. So that is not what is said in Stewart's report, and I think also Chris says in his email to me that we'll test it in August. Well, that wasn't our understanding standing on site, that we wanted to do a test sooner rather than later. Since then, we've learned that the wall that was built around the transformer doesn't meet Holy Cross specs. They need a certain amount of clearance space around the transformer. So if they have to go in an emergency, they have these huge rods that they go in and they can throw open the doors and they can stick something in and turn it off. Well, the wall blocks this. So the wall has to be deconstructed
Great.
and relocated. And so we should not schedule a test until that's done. Max Deuce of Holy Cross, who's my contact at Holy Cross, says he wants this wall redone as soon as possible. So we're looking to reschedule the test as soon as the wall is reconstructed. And so I request direction from the board to the applicant on that. Finally, the last item is there was a question of occupancy of the 3 EDU units. And the applicant has submitted all the paperwork. Andrew Miller of our Housing Resiliency Sustainability Department reviewed all of them. You know, Andrew used to work for APCHA. So Andrew looked at all the documents and has confirmed that the units are being occupied as required by the occupancy covenant.
Question. Is there any way you could put hinges on that wall so it could swing out and they could go in, and, or is that just, they're not gonna accept that?
Possibly. I think there was a conversation that I wasn't part of, unfortunately, this morning with the architects to get an understanding. Their understanding was that their location was compliant. And then we'll follow up with Holy Cross and see what we need to do. One way or another, something needs to happen.
I just want to make one point. In my memo, I say it is apparent, just standing in a transformer, that the sound wall has made a difference. That's my opinion. That is, it was not, the transformer was not measured, so we really, that is not scientifically based.
Right, well,
my
nothing is,
opinion.
nothing is. Does Stuart McGregor have to be present in order to do the test again? So he has to come from Denver. It's not like you could pop down there tonight without getting him to come from Denver.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
But we can't, the wall has to be reconstructed.
right. You gotta
And
fix that first.
as Tom pointed out to me, you know, there could be some topographical issues with how big the wall has to be and things like that, so.
Does it have to move dramatically farther from the transformer? Is it a matter of inches or feet or?
It's feet. It's, I think they're looking for a 10-foot offset, and we're at 3 or 4
Oh, boy.
currently.
Depends on the length
So
of
it's
the
an inner
pole.
wall.
It's 5 feet on the sides and 10 feet in the front.
And
Okay.
Francie.
So it seems to me that's gonna reduce the viability of its effectiveness quite a bit. Right? The further away it is, the less effective it's gonna be.
Well, I
I
don't
would
know
think.
that, I
I'm
don't know
not
we know
thinking
that. Stuart probably know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Once we have a good sense of what the dimensions, the new dimensions need to be, Stuart will need to opine on, like he did before.
Okay.
Wall construction.
And then I have a question about, so operations are continuing and you can continue to operate until we can retest and stuff? But this is not affecting operations right now.
Correct, we're operational.
And that was not, as far as staff is concerned, and that's another reason why we brought this back to you as an update, is, the condition, the deadline of February 28th. The EDUs are occupied, there was a good faith effort to get out there and measure the sound and, for reasons that, none of us could control. I mean, the wall's out of compliance.
So
And then could we just have your interpretation of the values of the testing that were able to happen in terms of how loud were they, Tom?
She's looking at Tom, I think.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So could you just give me your interpretation of the results of the testing that did happen on site?
Sure. There's the two, thanks, Greg. The two fans, the top of the fans was reoriented in the directions that were effective. The testing of one of the fans, one closest to be on the east side, I guess, was somewhat effective in reducing the sound going towards the property line. The other fan next to the chiller was not that effective, maybe 1 or 2 decibels. But keeping in mind that it's still in compliance with the county ordinance. So it was unfortunate that we couldn't get the chiller running in agreement with Leslie when we were standing around trying to get it going. The thought was we would come back on to try to simulate the highway interference to have it minimized, would be to try it on a Sunday afternoon before the lifts close when it would be warm and try to minimize traffic noise. And so that's when we were talking about even later this month or in April. And in Stuart's report, he indicates that it would be August, and I think Chris is indicating August. But our conversation that night was that we'd do it sooner than later. And that's in, Mike Morrison was there, understood that as well. I'm not speaking for him, but the intent was to get this done as quickly as we could and effectively and scientifically as we could. The repairs that have been done were done as per the design. We just couldn't verify it completely because of the weather.
Thank you.
Chris, you got some follow-up thoughts?
My understanding, talking with Stuart, is he was looking for doing the follow-up during the heat of the summer, when the sun's been shining on the equipment all day. I mean, the issue with the chiller is that it's efficient, and so when the fan coils turn on, it lowers the temperature down to what it needs to do, and during the winter. Or even this time, the compressors probably don't even need to kick on. So, Jared was able to get the compressors to kick on, but they were on for a minute or something, and then it was down to the temperature where it shuts itself off so that it doesn't get too cold.
So Leslie, given the report, I think says 48 degrees is the threshold to kick on. Can we get this scheduled in March or April?
I'd like to, and really now it's all a matter of reconstructing the wall.
Do we have a date for that to be completed? And do we have a definitive setback that we need to hit from Holy Cross from a design standpoint?
I thought Tom said 5, 5, and 10.
Yeah, we don't have a date yet. We want to confirm those dimensions, make sure we know what we're doing, and then set that up for construction. I don't have a date for you.
Can we try to get this done by end of April? So it's
I know it needs to happen as soon as possible. That was Holy Cross's response that Leslie provided.
Just wondering, I don't know how, if Holy Cross has the ability to bring in a transformer housing that is quieter. No doubt this is an issue everywhere, and somebody probably makes a housing for a transformer that has sound dampening built into it. Maybe it does already. I'm just wondering, if the sound dampening is on the box itself, then the setback isn't an issue. If we set back so far from the transformer, I think Francie's right, it just becomes less effective as a reflecting or absorbing mechanism.
We can review that with them. I know when we
If they would,
very
maybe
first,
they'll help us out.
when we first started on this, we talked about putting dampening materials
On it.
either on the transformer or inside the transformer, and they were not keen on that. But we can review that with them.
Yeah, just wondering.
Patty?
I think the problem with the fence around it is the fact that in an emergency, they need to be able to get in there with a pole long enough for workers' safety to shut the thing down. So that moving the fence around it has to do with their requirements, which I believe is for safety, fire issues. That's one thing. The other thing, I have to ask this question. On the affordable housing note, why was it prior to 5 a.m. on February 27th?
Why was it what, at 5 a.m.?
It says, the BoCC Reso required submission of this information prior to 5 a.m. on February 27th. Leslie, were you up at 5 a.m. on February
There was a P
27th?
missing.
It could be a typo, however,
I think it was from Chris. Or to
no,
Chris.
it was me,
Oh.
it was my language. It could totally be a typo, but however, everything with this project has been absolutely the last minute.
I'm like,
Last minute.
So you give
So
'em
I
12
was
hours.
giving myself some time on the 27th to say, we don't have everything, we need stuff.
by the
and-
28th.
And I need Andrew to look at this stuff, and,
I just thought that was interesting. I didn't
yeah,
read this.
I read it too, and I went
This
back
was
and
Chris
looked at
Bennett
it.
and this was Chris's thing. It says his name signed at the bottom of it, so.
But I think you copied what I said in the resume, yeah.
So
I'm giving it to Chris on this
Leslie,
one.
Leslie, Chris, and Tom, I think what you're hearing from the board is that August is too late. What you've identified as 48 degrees is the threshold in order to turn on the chillers. We'd love to see your wall reconstructed and tested before the summer. So we'd love to see this wrapped up in the springtime.
The other item that Stuart mentioned is that in August, he has some class that he's teaching. So his ideal time frame for the summer measurements would be July, and that's why we were trying to compress those two things into one trip and one set of reports and et cetera. But we'll do what the board asks us to do.
Last thing, if I could, it seems to me if the wall moves farther away from the box, it may have to get taller.
It might, and that we'll have
So it has to
Stuart.
be redesigned.
We'll want to make sure that Stuart is comfortable in signing off on the wall as it needs to be reconstructed,
Great, yeah, it just seems like the design will change.
including any
Architects.
hinge or anything
Yeah.
that could.
Seems like a top on the walls would be effective as well.
So Leslie, anything else you need from this meeting?
No, thank you. I hope you don't mind that we brought this back to you.
No, appreciate the update.
Thank you, Leslie.
At least it wasn't at 5 a.m.
Tom,
It
how
was
was,
not at 5 a.m.
Tom, how was your holiday? Tom, how was your holiday? Wasn't this all around your holiday?
It was great. Oh, yeah,
It
fun.
was.
Well, we were in Florida for a while, and then we got back from Utah last night, so getting around a little bit. So
Good for you.
had to come back early for this, you know.
That's why we have to get this done.
And Jay, we're running about 15 minutes ahead, so we're going to grab water. Andrew Knapp is already here, so we're going to, in 3 minutes, start with Andrew Knapp, if that's all right.
Do we have anybody else who might be, since we're on a time
We can
frame?
always take a longer break before. Welcome back. This is the work session of the Board of County Commissioners. It's Tuesday, March 25th. We're running a couple minutes ahead of schedule. We took a quick water break, and now we're doing future agendas. We'll be back on schedule with Andrew Knapp at 2:15, but quickly, the board is going to go through future agendas. If you're following at home, we're on page 152. April 1st, reviews of both John and Rye. That has already been passed out to the board. We are looking for an affordable lunch in the city of Aspen. It has yet to be discovered. Lainey's working on it.
What? An affordable lunch for what?
For staff, for the board.
Reviews.
It's a working meeting. Solid Waste Center, and then Habitat funding request for their modular. And it's our last day of interviews for citizen boards. And then we'll be making decisions that afternoon. Any updates to April 1st?
Yeah, Jeffrey, I think there was a question. The board has interviewed, Jack Cohn has been actively applying for a number of boards. I think you just recently interviewed him. I'm forgetting for which one. It might have been.
He might have interviewed for AAB or Planning and Zoning, his last
think
one.
It was P and Z, and he's also applying for the AAB, and we just wanted to check if the board wanted to interview again, or if you would be able to,
What's he applying for now?
Airport Advisory Board. So he's applied for P and Z and Airport Advisory Board. I think y'all had a pretty robust conversation with him, so we just wanted to check and see if you wanted to interview him again, or if you would just want to use the experience that you've had with Jack interviewing him for the FAB, for P&Z. It's really up to the board. It just saved a little bit of time that day. We're going to be a little bit tight on the agenda.
Board feeling,
I don't know,
keep
it's a
Jack.
different board and different input, but it's up to the board. I don't,
Yeah.
I'm comfortable. I feel like we have a sense of who he is.
I feel like I know who he is. My biggest concern is that how many boards can we put one person on?
One. So
You can only
if,
serve
No,
on one.
wait, that-
Home rule charter is you
Actually,
can only
not
serve
true,
on one.
actually. Howie Mallory is serving on 2. We went through this when he upped for another one. Howie's on 2 boards.
that is correct. They're
Boards versus committees.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know we had this confusion before, and so I'm adding to it right now. But typically, the board's practice has been to appoint to one, but you can appoint to multiple if you want
Thank you.
to. Yes, thank you for the
Yeah, that's a
correction.
concern, though. I'm concerned about that.
And is that consistent with the home
the
rule
board
charter?
doesn't want to interview him
This is the
again,
question.
I'm okay with that.
It was, I believe we talked to Rye about this because Howie was, had applied to be on the AAB, and it was consistent.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm hearing we're leaving Jack.
Yeah, we can leave him out.
What do you mean?
We don't need to interview him.
We don't
I
need to
don't- I
interview
don't
him
need to.
again.
Okay.
Unless Jack feels he needs to be interviewed, but I think that,
Any other questions on April 1st?
I might be late getting to exec because I'm doing an interview for the Historic Awards ceremony in Denver, but I'll be at the courthouse and they're planning to get me out of here, over here by 10 o'clock, but, so I'll be here. then.
April 4th, we are driving up to Meredith, Colorado.
Correct.
Yeah, and so a car has been reserved. I think, I want to say.
I'm picking one up at the garage. Greg, you're supposed to pick one up at Public Works.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna meet in Basalt and we're gonna carpool
Got it
from
on
there.
my calendar.
All right.
Where are we meeting?
Hall.
Meeting at Basalt Town Hall, and then driving up to Baywolf
Or the
from there.
cafe across the street.
You can meet there, we know where to
So
find
moving
you.
right along, April 8th. It's all about water. And the record of decision.
Well, generally, we just say, does anybody have any comments they want to submit for the, open it for the agendas? So do you want to just jump to what people might have comments on, or do you want to go through them each individually?
I got 4 minutes.
Okay,
Patty, do you have any additions, clarifications, deletions, changes?
I do, on the 9th. I have a question as to what is contracting authority? It's items 4, 5, and 6 on the 9th.
Oh, yeah.
What
So,
is that?
yeah, so what this is, and it's been a conversation we've been having with the attorney's office. We oftentimes bring to you all contracts because they're with the state for $1,200 or what have you, which is different than our procurement policy for contracts with private entities. And so the attorney's office has looked at this, and there's a determination that the board has the authority to delegate that if you would like, because oftentimes we're probably spending more processing some of these agreements with the state with 2 reads and such than not. And so it was really looking at those.
Is there a dollar value placed on that, or it's just any and all? So it could be a $12 million contract and,
Yeah, it all has to be approved through budget anyway, and so particularly if you're seeing a contract that large, it is a project that we've vetted through the board and such. Yeah.
So then the follow-on question from Patty is similar to number 7. Does staff then come back at the end of the year, similar to what Suzanne's doing, and present everything?
Yeah, that is certain. I mean, the board has the opportunity to do to direct staff however you want. I mean, if you want to continue seeing these smaller contracts, we can continue to do that. We had done this previously, and there wasn't a reporting request from the board because of the nature of those contracts. But if that's something that the board would want to see, for example, in a Board of Social Services meeting, in the case of the Human Services Department or airport, we could certainly take that
I don't
direction.
think we need to see all the contracts unless staff wants to bring us something that jumps out at them. But the covenants for Suzanne, covenants are a little different than these contracts. So keeping Suzanne doing what she's doing rather than bring them to us every time she brings us a summary, and then doing these smaller grants through these other entities makes sense to help things move along.
And so, well, it's really up to the board. It's more of an efficiency matter
Yeah.
for staff.
I'm happy to let them to delegate it.
And
So
on
we'll see
that
that.
day, I have one more.
Yeah.
Um,
Patty.
On item number 11, John, that is an incorrect title. I think it'll be cleaned up. It's not approving acquisition.
You are correct. We thought we had caught that on the first 2, but it should be similar to the item that you're hearing
That we're gonna
today,
see
which is
tomorrow.
approving,
Okay,
yeah,
just
and that
wanna
you're
make
going to see
sure we-
tomorrow. Yep.
Don't miss that.
Thanks, Patty.
John, on,
That's all I have, Jeff.
April-
Thank you.
thank you, Patty, sorry. On April 22nd, we're prepping for the meeting on April 22nd for Eagle County. 3:15 PM on 4/22.
Yeah, we're gonna prep in the morning and have the meeting in the afternoon.
Yeah. Well,
We'll
That's,
correct that.
yeah, we're going to need to obviously find a different time for
Have we
that.
set a date for the meeting with Eagle County?
Well, it did get moved from April, if you recall, it got moved to May, I want to say 6th.
So it is,
And so,
so it is right, it's just the date's incorrect.
yeah, I think, yes.
Thank you. Any other future
Good catch.
agenda
No,
updates,
thanks.
changes? So we are a minute early for Mr. Knapp. If you would like to take your seat at the dais, we would enjoy.
It takes him a long time to set up, just so you know. He's
Well, good afternoon, Board.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Wanted to provide you all with an update on our Lower River Road paving project that's planned for this summer. Talk a little bit about the scope and schedule, and then, of course, budget. We received 3 bids on this project March 13th, and they were fairly competitive. Our 2 lowest price bids were within a rounding error of each other, and the third bid was significantly higher. We like seeing 3 bids, to prove out the competition and pricing on the project. Just, some more background is, this project's been identified on our 5-year plan for a few years, and it was highlighted even further with the additional traffic we had on the road last summer during CDOT's Snowmass Canyon paving project. Got a lot of extra traffic, truck traffic, to support that project, and our deterioration out there is accelerating. And we'd like to get that addressed here in short order. We've got a bit of a timing challenge right now with our project development cycle and our budgeting cycle, where I'm running a really lean staff. It's me, 1 engineer, and 1 analyst for the entire county. And my engineer is working double duty doing construction management and design project development for these projects. And last year he was running and managing the chip seal project and wasn't able to spend a lot of time to progress the design on this project when I had to finalize our budget numbers for the board. So part of what we've seen with our price differential between the budget and the actual bid is some scope creep, some elements along the road that were identified during the course of the design. Things, additional drainage work. We want to do ADA compliance of the crossing of the Rio Grande Trail on the numerous crossings of Lower River Road, which are federal requirements for anytime you do an overlay. You have to bring your adjoining facilities up to ADA standards, so that's not something we can just skip as part of the project, and we're happy to get that addressed. And also having some additional investigation of utilities in the area and their potential conflicts with our proposed drainage improvements. There's a high-pressure gas line along Lower River Road as well as a distribution line, and we're trying to thread the needle between the gas lines here and not have to get into any relocations of those gas lines. So that takes traffic control and utility potholing, where you basically expose the top of the utility and determine exactly where that utility is in that potential conflict location. So those are, just elements of some additional expense we've incurred as design has progressed, and we've identified those additional items. We want to, put the additional work into the roadway now before the overlay to get the most out of our investment in that roadway and have that pavement last as long as we can.
Question? Could I ask, what's just regarding ADA compliance, I'm thinking of the crossing, say below the Woody Creek Tavern, off of the Woody Creek Road. What happens in a crossing like that for ADA compliance?
So the big things for ADA compliance are grades, making sure the cross slope is not above 2%, making sure your running slope is not more than 8.33%. I like to personally design it to 7.5% because there's a lot of construction irregularity. No one hits the design 100%. And then the biggest thing for these crossings on the Rio Grande Trail is the detectable warnings. And you might see them as truncated domes or just the dimples on a curb ramp. And that is for sight-impaired individuals, so they know they are leaving a sidewalk or trail and entering a roadway where there could be traffic. I think most of the grades of the trail are probably pretty close or within tolerance for ADA, but none of them have the truncated domes. So that's something we're going to be adding in addition to making sure all those grades of the ramp are correct.
Thank you.
Patty?
Yeah, and hitting on the ADA, it's being talked about at the federal level, doing away with the American Disabilities Act compliances. They're talking about not bringing them in because it's costing too much for projects, especially for businesses who have to be ADA compliant. I think we still should be, especially when it comes to safety, public safety issues, but just food for thought. That's coming down the pike. I think we should definitely move forward on this, and it'll come back to us at a budget supplemental.
Yeah,
Out
so
of your savings. at the-
yeah, I wanted to bring this in front of you guys now to prepare for the April 9th meeting with Connie that you guys have scheduled to discuss the carry forwards. So in discussing the bid price that we got with Connie, you know, she identified that we have adequate funds in savings from last year that we could apply to this project as part of that carry forward approvals you guys have scheduled on the 9th.
Right.
So I wanted to brief you on why that was coming up as part of that and talk about the project. And so with the board's approval, this won't have any impact on our future plans because those are savings from past years. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Francie, any questions?
No.
For Andrew?
okay.
Anything else we missed on the financials or elsewhere?
You know, I'm gonna try and get us on a better cadence for these designs, so we have some of these scope items fleshed out during the budget cycle, so I don't have to come to you when we have these scope increases. As much
We
as
always like seeing
I
you.
like to see you too, but maybe not the best
Good
use of your
answer.
time. You know, it's not the most efficient way for planning, so I might need to utilize some consultant resources during construction to help staff that project, to free up our internal resources for that design, to try and get more in line, and then also to try and get our bids out in the fall where we do see somewhat better pricing when contractors aren't fully booked up for the year as
Thank
well.
you.
So that's going to be a goal, but it's a multi-year effort to, you know, keep inching that forward because of our staffing levels.
We appreciate that. Thanks.
Any other questions for Andrew?
Thanks, all.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Nice to
Thank
see
you. Good
both
to
of
see
you. Are
you.
you staying around or are you leaving?
So again, we find ourselves in the uncomfortable position of early.
We don't have anybody
We
here.
could move
Well,
to
Jeff
open.
is here.
Yeah, but we have a time frame and we might have people who want to join us. So.
Kara, I did
see
just
what Jeff
text
says.
Kara, but if you want to move to open discussion,
Great.
Yeah. Perfect.
staff does have a few items.
So Jay, we've moved to open discussion and we're staying with our schedule. 2:45 will be History Colorado /
Perfect.
Redstone.
All right.
Thank you.
I wanted to start off, and this is an item I'm going to want to repeat tomorrow during public comment, I think and there's going to be a press release going out on this. But we have been made aware that of fraudulent calls and emails being made to our short-term rental license holders. We want to make the public aware, particularly those license holders, that scammers are posing as county officials, including myself, falsely claiming that an STR license is at risk of revocation unless immediate payment is made. This is not true at all. And if anyone is receiving a message from the county requiring payment in that way, that is not how we do business. Do not respond to
Are
it.
they texts or emails?
I believe they are emails. Do you know about the phishing method?
He was
Thank
gonna
you,
act-
Andrew.
That's
He's
exactly
going
what
to
I
come
came
to us
down, just to
tomorrow
back
at
you up
open
a little bit.
discussion.
So Andrew, introduce yourself, please.
Absolutely. Andrew Shoemaker, IT manager here for Picken County. And as John was just alluding to, we were made aware that a lot of our short-term rental permit holders have been receiving malicious phishing attacks, campaigns to try and, take bad actions against them. I believe they were primarily delivered via email, and not out of the county's network or any compromise on our end, just wanting to make more of a public service announcement so that folks know As John was about to say, we're issuing a press release with some instructions, some actions that folks can take. But if you see anything that doesn't seem right, feels a little bit off, certainly give us a call, reach out and get on the phone with somebody to confirm the legitimacy of that request.
Yeah, it's really important for the public to know that Pickens County will never call, email, or text to demand immediate payment for license renewals, violations, or penalties. That is not how we do business. So if you receive an email, call, or text making that kind of demand, that is not a legitimate request. Yeah. Email messages from Pickens County will always come from an individual with an @pickenscounty.com email. If you are getting these requests, ignore it, delete the message, report the email as junk if received electronically, hang up immediately. If it's a call, do not give any information or respond to any questions. You don't want your voice recorded with anything. And then you can verify, if there is a need, you feel a need to verify the legitimacy or not, call the county at 970-920-5200.
Thank you. Thanks.
And we'd like to repeat that again tomorrow, but we wanted to start getting it out, hopefully with our friends in the room,
Greg, for
as soon
John.
as possible.
Just wondering, are we going to run an ad in the paper or an ad? It sounds like that's pretty important.
We've already put information out on social media regarding this. The press release is coming. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. The press release is out at this point, and since we had our local reporter sitting here, I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about during open discussion.
Great.
Andrew, anything we missed?
Nope, that was great. Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Thank you.
There's a lot of
See you
that sort of
tomorrow.
scamming going on right now.
Saying I have to pay my toll.
Oh, I'm getting those
Everybody
too.
else getting this?
I didn't know I traveled so many great
I've been shopping
have to
around
pay by the
Denver
15th.
apparently.
Yeah. The next
John,
day.
any
Pay
any
by the
other
17th.
open discussion items from you? Thank you, Andrew.
Actually, it's like out of Massachusetts or someplace.
Right, yeah.
So just wanted to follow up. We had the RAFTA letter, and there's a question about to whom it should be addressed that we talked about last week. And they actually want it to go to CCI, Kelly Flanagan, and Kristen Dunn, and CML, Kevin Balmer, so not the delegation.
Wonderful.
So just wanted to follow
This
up
is
on
about
that.
addressing rural transportation authorities.
This was the use of extending the tax exempt status from sales tax for supplies used to construct affordable housing for RAFTA.
This is the Nexus thing.
Clarifying that, yeah.
So RAFT is building affordable housing, renovating this hotel, and we were taxed on, and that just pushed us over the top. So thanks, I was going to bring that up today. Thank you.
And that's all I have for open discussion.
Francie, open discussion.
No, I don't have any open discussion today. Thank you.
Patty.
No, I'll just wait for commissioner comments on boards we're on.
Wonderful. Greg, anything on open discussion?
Only thing for open discussion is that the snow is as good or better here than it is in the Alps.
I thought we were going to say the Dolomites.
Well, the Dolomites are actually part of the
Yeah.
Alps. It's just a different stone.
There was no snow in Mexico.
There's no snow in Mexico.
I didn't
See, the
see
snow
any.
is much better here and the Dolomites than it is in Mexico.
And I'm assuming we're not going to do membership reports. We have 15 minutes still. We're just moving.
We could start.
could
it.
start
We
membership
have the
reports.
folks here for the.
John, I'm just wondering if anybody from Redstone might want to be calling in and they think the meeting's starting at 2:45.
Jeff might know.
Well,
The only one I know that might would be Jameson, and that's not a given, and Spiro from the grant, when the grant people was gonna.
And the board has the option if you want to take a 15-minute break to
or we could do
keep
member
on
updates.
schedule.
Couldn't we start that?
So, Patty Clapper, member updates. Akron, NACO, Northwest COG ED.
Good, yeah. ACRA had a meeting this morning. It was lightly attended because of people being out of town. We discussed a few things of interest. The proposal to create another transportation commission or committee or something came up. people found that interesting with all the other groups that are trying to form about transportation, from the entrance to Aspen or traffic congestion or whatever. Acra's going to be moving soon into the Armory. That's just going to be the visitor center. The Acra business offices have to find a different location, so they're going to be working on that until maybe the city redetermines the use of the Armory and allows Acra to keep their offices at the same place their visitor center is. So that's kind of an ongoing discussion. NACO, they are planning their July conference around the weekend of July 12th. I am planning to go right now to be part of their transportation policy group and get more involved in their airport subcommittee.
Where's it gonna be?
It's in Philadelphia. It's the same weekend as we have another very important event here in town, which I'm sorry I'm gonna miss, but I couldn't get the people holding that event to change their mind. It's his wedding. So he's not listening to me, but he didn't.
Oh, I apologize.
I
was
asked you to change
multitasking.
that date in July, and you said you just couldn't, so.
Oh, yeah, I'm not the boss of that.
Yeah. Northwest COG meeting, Jeffrey and I attended, and I'm so sorry. I thought it was at 8:30. Jeffrey and I got there at 8:30. It didn't start till 10, but I got a lot of work done. And it was in their new warehouse, their energy warehouse, which is right by the airport in Eagle. We got to tour their tiny house that they built. It was very cool. They're using it for trainings for Northwest COG weatherization employees, but also they're going to start offering it up to others so we can have more trainees for HERS ratings, et cetera, et cetera. It's a great opportunity. So that was a great meeting. We talked a lot with Barbara Green, QQ. She is awesome. It was so great to have her in the room. And she had some comments specific to what the federal government is doing as far as words. And some of the notes that Jeffrey took, Barbara was saying things about stay in your own lane. The feds are not focusing really on towns and counties at this point, focus on what we can do here. And she was going to be looking to the American Bar Association to see what their standing might be on some of these actions that are taking place at the federal level. So we're looking at also what the state does as far as gender protection, anti-discrimination. There's kind of a catch-22 between federal gender and state protection. And the phrasing of grant language, John, this is key. Remove with a word such as weatherization, air quality, anything that's equity, diversity. It's very broad list. John Daughter got 3 pages of words or something outrageous.
Yeah, I'll be happy to share it with you, what they're distributing to at least in my daughter's college, words they can't hashtag with the college now.
Yeah, and we just have to be careful because they are, again, using AI to scan our contracts and our grant opportunities to see what kind of language is used. Jeffrey, I'll let you go into the federal lands because you have more specifics on that, but we did discuss impacts of selling off of federal lands and how 1041s may, I guess I'll finish it up.
No, you're good. You're good.
1041s may come into play on that. What was really interesting when they're looking at development of issues on our public lands, there's some legal ground for, say, municipalities that are within 5 miles of their watershed for their community water supply, and how any activity around those areas on public lands may have issues to be mitigated. So therefore, there can be a role playing from either counties or cities, whoever uses that as their water supply. So there's some opportunities for local jurisdictions to have control over what may happen on public lands. Just depends on the definition of the projects that may be offered up on our public lands. We just don't know where that's going to lead us. Most of it, of course, is about extraction of natural resources and the sale of these lands to be developed for purposes we don't know the gamut just yet. So it was a really good Northwest COG meeting. The Economic Development District, again, is having their symposium. I invite any members of this board. I've mentioned it again at ACRA. It's a great symposium. It's from 8:30 to 3 on Thursday, May the 1st. It's in Silverthorne. It's a great event. We're trying to get some local speakers over there. They're going to do the basics, but a summary of what's happening in today with housing and childcare and all those issues that we are concerned about as far as being hit by cuts at the federal level and at the state level, trickle-down effect, or directly from the state budgetary cuts that may be coming forward. They're also going to have the state demographer will be there to do a presentation, which is always great. It will be videotaped or whatever, so if the board wants it, or we can get the slide decks. But so that's a great event if anybody's interested in going.
I'm interested.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great event. The other thing is the TPR. Again, it stands with the bill has been withdrawn at this time
What
to
is it?
separate our transportation
Oh,
funding
the
region.
groupings, the different
Yeah,
groupings.
right now we're staying as one. It's interesting that the entities within our TPR region didn't want it to be split up. It was coming from another entity. And so right now, it's my understanding that that's not moving forward at the state legislature level. So that's where we are there. And Brian is still acting as the chair. He just got reelected to be the chair of our TPR Mountain Region, which is great. And I think for me, that pretty much sums it up. I'll keep the board posted on anything else that comes out of my involvement with NACO.
Wonderful.
Want me to go?
Yeah, Francie.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Not quite back yet, so this
You
is
can-
gonna be great.
Some salsa on that.
Yeah. Well, CCI was very aptly covered by Levi. CPW, I talk with Matt on a pretty regular basis, as well as John Groves, and I don't have any further information on the wolf depredation, although I've been called by reporters and people interested. And my son Ty didn't know details either, so I'm not quite sure what the story is there. I heard it was 6 wolves, but then I just read in the paper, 6 calves, but I just read in the paper it's 1 and possibly a second one, so it just shows you how fast rumors distort. When the Colorado Sun called me, she said 6, and I was like, what? I was pretty sure I'd heard about that, but anyway, I am going to be talking to Matt again this week and see if I can get any more information out of that. All the water stuff, we're going to be covering that pretty soon altogether anyway, so I don't think I know anything right now that you guys don't already know. Or if you don't already know it, you will hear it very shortly. I have met with Kevin and talked to him again at the caucus in the Crisp River caucus. And the one thing about that caucus, I think I mentioned it to a couple of you, but not officially, is this plan to, this company wanting to put in this conduit for electricity to the top of McClure's that I talked to you guys about. I didn't talk to you about it. Okay, so it's a company called Stryker, I believe. And they had asked Kevin to present their proposal to the Forest Service and to Gunnison County about putting a new communications tower on the top of McClure's Pass. And it followed Gary's presentation at the caucus meeting, where he's talking about the bike trail and how much, how big the path would be on the bike trail, the amount of damage that would be done to the forest, and when the people would be able to ride, when they wouldn't because of the fledgling issue and stuff. So Gary did his presentation, and then Kevin presented what Stryker has proposed, and it made Gary and the bike trail look like a gift from heaven because they're talking about going from, I believe they have a 95-foot tower up there now, which doesn't really communicate emergency services at all.
That's what that guy called me about.
And has no phone service connection really, to 175 or 190-foot, 5-foot tower. Have you heard about this, Jeff? And in order to make that operate, they'd have a 12 by 40-foot building that would have their HVAC situation inside it, because it takes a tremendous amount of cooling and stuff, I guess, to operate this communications tower. And then from 133 up, it would follow pretty much the same route as the proposed bike trail along the old, from Placida up along
Old
the
road.
old McClure's Pass Road. And I asked him, well, what kind of easement do you need to put in this conduit for this power line? It's 8 feet wide through the national forest there. 8 feet of clearance to put, and it would be buried deeper than 3 feet. Then at the top, where the building is and the tower, they'd have to mitigate quite a large area for fire mitigation. So it's a really big impact up there. I thought people at the caucus meeting were shocked when they heard about it. The guy had come over from Gunnison, I can't remember his name now, and he says there have been communication with Pitkin County in the past about this,
Years of communication.
and it never went anywhere. And he said, I kind of ran out of time to try to communicate about it. And and then of course there were questions like, well, why can't we put solar up there to run this? And the answer was nebulous, sort of like, well, they haven't okayed solar for the power source for this kind of tower or something like that. And then somebody said, well, why don't we use Starlink or something like that? And so there were a few questions like that about, I mean, really people were amazed. They could hardly even respond. We were so shocked. And I did talk to Kevin afterwards about it, and obviously would have to go through a NEPA study, and just, I don't think he was thrilled with the idea of it. Let me put it that way. I don't know what his, I don't think he
Comes
has an
NEPA
official
again.
stance. They're not allowed to have opinions, but
Were they asking us for something?
were they what?
Asking us for support or something, or?
No, and I said, well, who's going to fund this? Is it going to be Gunnison? Is it going to be Pitkin? Who's funding this? It sounds like maybe the company will fund it, because the ultimate goal is once they get this created, they will sell access to Verizon and AT&T and that sort of stuff.
Cell tower.
Yeah, so it was an unusual meeting because of that. And it was the last thing on the agenda. And it was just such a downer. It was.
We talked about that tower. Kara was extremely involved in it, trying to get access to it through the forest to replace it because of the emergency response issues, not to take it from 95 feet to 120 plus feet.
Oh, no, it's like 175. It's
so
really, really, really tall.
yeah, the plan, we couldn't even get that Forest Service to move on just a replacement so that it worked kind of tower. So I'm surprised that the Forest Service would even consider,
I don't know if they are considering it.
because I would like them to consider letting us replace it for emergency response activity.
Well, it's not working for emergency response. Parker was there, and he talked about the need for, it is apparently the darkest hole in Colorado, the least communicative center in Colorado.
It's a plus.
Which is fine, exactly. You leave Delta, or maybe you leave Paonia, that one gas station in Paonia, that's the last place you can make a call from. And then the next place is Bill Fales' place, that's the next
But
place
it's
you have
also a
reception.
hot spot
It's
for
like,
emergency
you just
response.
know that's gonna be the case, so what's the big deal? It's kinda nice to have a place where
But
there's
it's
no
a
cell
hot spot
service.
for emergency response.
That's right.
That's
So
what
that's
came
the
up.
problem, is that they can't communicate with emergency response from there, so. Anyway, that's what happened at the last.
I'm
Crystal
sorry I
River
missed the
Caucus
meeting.
Yeah. And I will check in with Kevin again on that soon. And I'm sure you guys read that the Forest Service has appointed interim superintendent and deputy superintendent. And Kevin said that's taking a lot of pressure off of him, because he was going to have to step up quite a bit to fill in. And these people are incredibly well qualified. They're pretty exciting people to have around. So that was good news.
Did they say anything about reinstatements?
No,
No.
nothing on that. I did not go to the Club 20 thing. It conflicted with something. I can't remember what it was. So that's me.
Excellent. Greg, if we
Sure.
hold you till after, thank you, Francine.
Or I can just do it quickly, because there's not
In
that much.
20 seconds.
Hell, yeah. Here we go.
So Jeff and Cara, if you could join us
Want me
We'll
to
be ready
do it,
for
or you want me to do
2:45.
20
No, you got 20 seconds.
Okay, Levi covered
Just getting the maestro
CC4CA.
here.
All I can say is that every now and then I'm asked to testify, and I haven't lately, but I do. Core, I'm no longer on the core board, but I am mentoring new members that have brought in their citizen members, because all the electeds are off the core board. The QQ meeting is next week, or it's tomorrow,
actually
tomorrow
tomorrow.
morning, sorry. I'm still in Italy. Board of Health is next Thursday.
Are you attending in person tomorrow in Granby, or
No,
you're
I'm going to
attending
be,
from here?
I have to do it here because it's conflicts with our meeting. RAFTA, nothing to report right now, other than that of course, we're concerned about grants, a lot of grants in question, and how things are going to shake out, and we don't have any info on that yet, but we are preparing for a retreat. We'll learn that. RWAPA, nothing to report there, and opioid settlement, nothing there. Thank you. How'd I do?
You're 50
Good
seconds over.
job.
I went over 50 seconds. I'll do
It's
better.
wonderful.
You are a taskmaster.
Hey, nice hat.
So,
All right, now I gotta go back.
Cara Silbernagle and Jeff Beer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And Rosa, is Spiro on to be promoted?
Do you guys have the same hat on? Are you wearing the same hat today as Jeff?
Mine's brand new. His looks like he's been, wearing it.
All right.
I like that.
It's a nice hat.
It's a small group.
It's possible you gave it to me. I don't know where I got it.
Is Susanna coming?
She is out of the office.
Okay.
So
Jameson on.
Heroes on.
Susanna Reed, she is in South America.
Where is she? Casablanca?
South America.
Oh.
great. Okay, well, we'll get started. So good afternoon, Cara Silbernagle, Deputy County Manager, and Jeff Beer.
President of the Redstone Historical Society.
And then we have Spiro on with Sustainable Strategies DC, our grant writing and advocacy firm that has been helping with this project. So I'm really here to frame it up, and then I'll hand it over to Jeff and Spiro. But as you all are aware, Jeff has come in the past with seeking funding and support for the cottage acquisition for the Redstone Historical Society. And at the last board meeting, it was directed of the county would lend some of its grant writing support to help pursue some grant funding and potentially some matching dollars. So Spiro and Jeff and Susanna have all been working on a grant application to the State Historical Fund that they'll give some updates to you all. And then the way it is set up is 2 requests to the board today, and then based on your direction is set for tomorrow, is support from this board for the grant application showing support, and then also a request for matching dollars. Based on that, there is set for tomorrow during the regular meeting a resolution that states the board's support and would allocate those matching dollars if the grant was awarded. The grant is due on April 1st, so that's why we're in the tight timeline. So with that, Jeff, I'll hand it to you to give an overview of the project and the grant application.
Okay, thank you. We have been scrambling and working very hard, members of the board, to fulfill the requirements, and Spiro's been advising us and helping us with this to get all the material in. We still have a few items out there, but it seems like they're being taken care of. We have submitted petitions. The board is a bit younger than I am, so they're doing this all online. I'm, of course, walking around with some paper asking people to sign, so they'll outshine me probably with the numbers. And the owner, Tony Durrett, who's representing the owners, is one of the owners, is forwarding the letter, Spiro, for outlining his donation to the project. We've seemed to have picked up a lot of traction, particularly with this online petition that's going around. We're getting interest, and we're getting a few dollars coming in too. Nothing major. And speaking of dollars, we have approached the high dollar people that was suggested to us, and although we don't have any commitments, we don't have any rejections yet either. So we're gently pushing that, trying to get some people in for some larger funding. And once the application is in, we will be concentrating totally on funding. So, and raising the remainder of the funds that we might need. Everybody's pretty excited, and the talk has been actually what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, as if we had the property. So I think there's real enthusiasm for this on the board and other members of the community. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to do what I can.
So Greg, and then Greg.
Just, the question was, would it help if we wrote a letter of support as well? It sounds like you've got a reso, it's all powerful stuff, but if there's a cover letter or something else that would help, I'd certainly help.
Spiro, what do you think? A letter from the commissioners?
I think that could be a good idea. I don't think it would hurt at all.
We can't
Definitely
hear
the
you.
resolution is the more important piece that we're concerned about.
Hang
but
on, Spiro.
certainly I don't think
Hang on.
Can he hear me? No.
Okay, now try.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the first part?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, resolution is great. Letter of support would also be great. And it's certainly something where we could provide a separate template and just have a separate general letter of support in addition to the resolution. It certainly wouldn't hurt.
So a couple questions. Oh, sorry, Patty.
No, you go.
No.
Well, I think that's a great idea. I support a letter. That's going to be part of what I have to say. I'm just a little confused. I thought you were asking for matching funds for the grant, but matching funds for the grant is only 25%, Jeff, isn't that what we found?
So Susanna, thank you. Thanks for teeing that up. So Susanna's note from May 6, 2024 says you're asking $62,500 of the county, which is a 25% match of the $250,000. So that's what's in our packet. So I'm a little concerned and confused. Or Patty's concerned and
No.
confused. I'm doing fine. Kidding. Sorry.
He was one who confused me.
So you're pursuing a $250,000 grant with Spiro. According to this, you only need 25% matching funds. So shouldn't the county, if we did, only then consider $62,500 as per Susanna's note?
That note, I think, is quite a while ago, if
So
I'm not mistaken.
2024.
Yeah.
I was middle-aged then.
Yeah. Since then, we have discussed matching grant from the county of $200,000 to encourage and spur other donations, particularly from the higher end people who have connections into the Crystal River Valley and Redstone and the area, which there are a few. And that's how we've presented it to those people and their representatives. So the $64,000 match, I would think might come out of that $200,000. I don't know that we've talked about that, Spiro.
I guess maybe I'll ask the question a different way, which is what is the minimum you need from the county in order to receive the state grant?
Yeah.
According to Susanna Reed, it's only $62,500.
Yeah.
Given the economic condition we
Right.
have and the limits on state and federal funding today, why are we still trying to pledge $200,000 when it doesn't house anyone? So, sorry, two-part question.
It doesn't house anyone?
I mean,
Not a
Yeah,
housing
okay.
grant.
from a strategic standpoint,
Sure.
we linked back to the strategic plan, but again, I don't see the
Okay.
flourishing built environment housing to employees in Redstone in this, given the financial
Well, actually,
consideration.
it could house at least one employee. There's a kitchen and there's 2 bedrooms and a bath. That could happen. Ultimately, I think it might be awkward as we develop and move down the road. We were looking at more long-term benefits to the town, to the businesses in town, and to our success and ability to garner the artifacts, documents, everything, photographs, everything else that we do have a central place, even the ability to research some of that. One of our board members, Lisa, has been in touch with Aspen Historic Society, who has offered anything we want to help us out with that aspect. And of course, the other thing are actual items, of interest that a museum typically features. So those are the in a nutshell, our goal. And we, so we were looking, this was incentive to bring in more donations, We're a small, we don't have a big area to draw from as far as our locals go. We have to reach out, and I think we can to get some of the matching funds. We are trying to still hit some of the more the wealthier donors or wealthier people that do have operations, branches, what have you, in the valley. So if we don't get those funds, we're at a disadvantage, and I was thinking that the matching funds for the grant would come out of there, and then out of the money, the $200,000 that the county was going to do for the matching grant.
John, and then Francie.
Yeah, so I think.
John had his hand up.
Oh, I apologize. I just
Please
wanted to put
proceed.
some context in, because I'm hearing, I think, two questions and what you're asking. One is, why the 200,000 versus 62,000? And Spiro, I may want to turn to you in a minute here just to talk about from a matching strategy, how overmatching may or may not play into this. But before getting into that, I think on the strategic plan alignment, Jeffrey, we from a staff perspective would be looking at the livable and supportive community, success factor number 4, which is access to recreation, education, arts, and culture, as being the connection into our strategic plan. But on the 200,000, I think, Spiro, you may be able to add some context in terms of the grant competitiveness. And then when the board's ready, I can talk about some potential sources, if that's okay.
That'd be great. And then we'll come back to Francie. So Spiro, and then back to Francie.
Sounds good. Yeah. So just to clarify, and there might have been some initial confusion where that 62,000 number came from. This program through History Colorado is a little bit different in that they're requesting their 25% match has to be out of the total project cost. So because technically our total project cost is $825,000, our 25% match would actually be $206,000 and change. So I think that 25% might have come from just because typically grant programs will frame the match portion in terms of in relation to your grant request and not the total project cost. But anyways, just to clear it up, just to make it clear, the 25% applies to the total project cost. So our total matching requirement for this project would be, $206,000. And then just to speak a little bit on competitiveness, we did talk to a program manager at History Colorado about the project. Susanna and I did about a month ago. And I mean, just in general, obviously it helps to come in with a higher local match, especially in terms of this project where, we're looking at $825,000 total project cost. The most we can ask for is $250,000. The owner contribution is $275,000. And so just the way the math works out, there is a pretty sizable gap between, the remaining delta on what we need to fill and then the amount that we could possibly get from History Colorado. So I think it's really twofold. It's just making sure that we can clear that $206,000 threshold just to even be able to apply to the project, but then also be able to show that, if we get this award from History Colorado, we've got everything lined up as best as we can to actually capitalize on that and deploy those funds. Hopefully that makes sense. Happy to answer any other questions.
Excellent. John, and then Francie?
I'll wait.
Thank you, Spiro. Francie?
All right, well, Spiro answered my first question. My second question is, who's going to own this building?
I don't have that answer, but I think part of the, I just talked with the owner and who's making the donation, and part of his tax benefits for him doing that is that the property remains in a conservation or in a nonprofit or something like that. We have no ego on this. It could be the commissioners, it could be open space, it could be us. We haven't discussed that superficially, we've discussed it, but we haven't really had any big thoughts about it. So I don't know.
Okay.
And we'd certainly be willing and want to hear from you and what your thoughts might be.
And then who's gonna operate it, and do you need a operational account of some kind to?
We have an account right now, and we're roughly, it's in excess of $20,000, which we have from our donations, just from the various things that we do. We do. We haven't worked out those details because we've been more focused on getting the grant and trying to figure out the funding and everything else. So we are totally open to suggestions, and as I say, we have whatever's necessary to make this happen, we're willing to. I haven't brought this to the board, but I'm sure they're willing to, do whatever.
Are you
is necessary.
imagining that volunteers would be sustaining it?
For
or paying
yes, we
employees?
are.
Volunteers?
Yes.
Okay.
And we've had good response in just initial queries to various people and people who have come to us too.
Patty?
Yeah, I want to be able to support this in some way, but I'm really confused now because I don't know how you can apply for a grant. We don't know who's going to own the building at the end of the day that we're going to be helping to purchase. I don't think the Board of Commissioners is going to own the building.
Okay.
I don't think Open Space and Trails is going to own the building. So that's a big question, and I think that would be a question that the providers of this grant opportunity would want to know before they granted $250,000 to purchase a building. You want to add on to that because I got
I
more.
do, yeah. So I think it would be a reasonable thing for Open Space and Trails, kind of like the building in Emma. And they have the park in Redstone, and I think if the county owned, if Open Space and Trails owned it, then if something went awry in Redstone with the
Never
Historical Society, I know nothing ever goes weird in Redstone, then we would have Open Space and Trails leadership to maintain whatever.
Well, I
I'm
think that-
talking 10, 20 years away or whatever. So I don't see it as an outsized request that Open Space and Trails.
But we
owns. I think
haven't,
it
we
fits.
haven't talked
No,
about
we haven't
that.
talked about it. I'm just saying that-
We're being asked tomorrow to donate. It's not a matching grant. I believe that when we first talked, we were offering to do the matching funds for the grant. And I have never heard of, and I would like Susanna Reed to clarify, the total cost of a project, you have to match a percentage of the total cost of a project. That's a new one for me, and I've been doing this for a while. But it could be different with this organization. But we don't really even know if 825,000 is gonna, haven't vetted all of those issues to know what the total cost is really gonna be at the end of the day. So I'm concerned that $200,000 coming from the county right now, as Jeffrey alluded to, we have so many issues facing us right now with what's happening at a federal and state level that and John, you're going to tell us where the money might be coming from, but I just need clarity as to what the 25% is really required, because it may be out of the total cost. Susanna didn't mention it, and she does these grants. I mean, that's her job. So I'm just kind of I know we have this looming time frame, which really makes it awkward for me to be pushed into a decision when we don't have all the information before us. Open Space may be like, oh yeah, bring it on, we want it, but as we said, we haven't had that discussion, and there's just a lot of unknowns right now. I want to find a way for us to help. I was comfortable with, because we said we would help with the matching amount, but we had no idea it was a matching amount of $825,000. We thought it was out of the $250,000 grant request. So that's concerning to me. So I'm not really sure how we can get where we need to go by tomorrow.
John?
Yeah, so a lot of things have been brought up, and so some are not necessarily resolved, and so we'll need some direction from the board regarding the 200,000. I do think that's been kind of evolving as we've been learning through our own consultants who have done quite a few of these also, but we can clarify further. I do think that 200,000 is going to be a required match. Whether all of that match has to come from the county is a decision for this body. If the board wanted to source some or all of that match, our recommendation right now would be to take that from a restricted fund balance, so it would not affect the general funds, discretionary capital or operating fund balances that you look at, which is from the parks dedication fees. We had spent those down, you might recall, for the Ty-Bar Ranch acquisition and trail construction. However, in 2017, no, it was prior to that. It was one of my first negotiations here, actually. It was with the Wexners on the Wexner Land Exchange. We had a $700,000 escrow to go towards acquisition of the Ty-Bar Ranch and construction of the trail. The timing did not work out for that, so we used the park dedication fees. The monies from the that were in the Wexner escrow have since been used to reimburse the park dedication fees. So we have just over $730,000 sitting in the park dedication fee fund right now. We are no longer collecting park dedication fees. We've been trying to actually spend those higher. We keep reimbursing those. Yeah, we keep finding ways to reimburse it. So we do have that pot of money that I think this project would be eligible for if the board wanted to use it.
Can I just finish real quick? I'd like to have legal advice on whether or not this qualifies as a park dedication funding opportunity.
Yeah, and we can certainly,
great.
yeah, we can certainly talk to Rye. We've run it through finance and such to look at the requirements, which were fairly, excuse me, fairly general for parks dedication fee. Plus, it's also been reimbursed. It's gone through some iterations here, but we can definitely confirm that. But we're feeling comfortable that those funds would be available for use if the board wanted. Now, the question of ownership of the building is one we haven't contemplated. It's just not one that we've talked about either with open space generally actually doesn't like to own houses. We do own a few of them. Given the county's participation, there may be some reasons for the county to maintain some ownership. However, it's just not a model we've contemplated yet. I think we had intended that there would be a nonprofit set up that would have ownership of the house and would operate it as a museum, and we're making a contribution to get that nonprofit started. So it's not out of question for us to have ownership if the board wanted to manage risk of a new nonprofit maybe or maybe not being successful in fundraising activities and such in the future. But I would need a little bit more time to think about a structure that'd be appropriate for that.
Can I respond to just that last comment?
Francie
Would
and
you
then
mind if I
Greg.
went ahead? So it's okay to go ahead with this and get the grant and everything and then worry about ownership as we approach a closing of the purchase? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, the ownership of the property couldn't be effectuated without a grant award anyway, but I think it would put us on a pretty fast track to figure this out. Spiro, what are the timelines for the grant award and disbursement? I don't know that.
I don't know off the top of my head, so I can try to check real quick.
Okay.
As a reminder, these are due April 1st. It's typically, I want to say like a 2 to 3 month time frame from application to submission to awards, but let me try to get an answer on that real quick.
Okay.
And just to clarify, at this point, the Redstone Historical Society is the grant applicant for this grant.
And then Greg.
Great, thank you. Jeff, I have to say, I'm first of all, I think if we review the conversation we all had about this, we were proposing a challenge grant of 200,000 to contribute to the purchase of this. That was totally clear to me. So
Yeah.
the thought that it's somebody suggested it only needs to be 62 makes zero sense, and I've never heard that before. So
It's in the information.
It's in the packet, is my point.
Yeah, well,
It's in a Susanna memo.
where Suzanne got that is kind of frustrating. So I remember that we committed that we were going to put 200,000 in as seed money to help encourage other, big donors to get involved. So I just want to make sure I understood it. The thing that disappoints me is that if you come in and tell us you don't know who's going to own it, you just caused a lot of red flags, which were so unnecessary. I was under the understanding that the Redstone Historical Society would own this building. If that has been changed, yeah, we need to figure it out. And perhaps if we're concerned about the longevity or the viability of the Redstone Historical Society, perhaps we should have some sort of ownership interest that reverts to us so we get our money back at some point through liquidation or whatever. But you really need to come and tell us who's going to own this. And I think it's you, right?
Well,
and that's what I expected to hear. I'm a little surprised.
Well, we are a registered nonprofit, so we can be
Okay,
the.
so that
and
needs
we've-
to be sorted out.
Yeah.
And I think that
yeah.
it sounds pretty simple to me,
Yeah.
but I might be missing
I thought
something.
there might be requirements, we thought from the county that they needed to participate and be part owners as donors. And I was not aware of, I thought it was a $62,000 or $64,000 match also. This is new to me as far as how this goes.
I do remember
Patty, then
agreeing
John.
to matching the grant. And so that's what I was prepared to do. I had concerns about putting in and creating a grant or a donation challenge, which has not occurred yet. I know you've been asking people, but it hasn't been set up.
So Spiro and then John.
But wait,
Sorry, Patty.
yeah, it
Patty,
hasn't
then
been
Spiro, then
set
John.
up. So I was hesitant to just do 200,000. We didn't know where it was coming from. I think we need to look into how we can use the Parks Fund if if it's owned by the historic. There's a lot of
Question marks.
things we need to clear up in order to do it and do it legally, protect the county's interest and the use of our funds. And I also think we need to keep in the back of our mind the precedent-setting nature of this, because we've got people knocking on our doors now to get funds out of us because everybody is in need of funding these days. So I think we need to make sure we have a clear path here before we jump on it.
Spiro and then John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Just wanted to clarify 2 points. So we're going to turn these applications in on April 1st. Decisions will be made by History Colorado by June 13th. And then I would expect, if we got the good news back about that, contracting would probably follow about a month after that. So June 13th would be the latest date that they'll announce these. And then I just want to try and clarify again where this 25% is coming from. Typically, I would say History Colorado is a bit different in how they're doing this. Most grant programs do not frame it as your cash match must be a percentage of the total cost. This one is a little bit different. But I just wanted to clarify that it is in fact 25% of the total project cost. And since we're under the acquisition category, the total project cost is just the cost of acquisition. So just wanted to make those points clear.
Thank you. John and then Greg and then Francie and then Jeff. And we've got 2 minutes for all 4 of you.
So,
Save some
one option the board has is that the funds would still need to be appropriated based on award. And so if the board wants to keep the option open by applying for the grant, you still have some checks and balances available to you if we're unable to figure out the ownership model and such in a way that's satisfactory. It does look by a quick search that the Redstone Historic Society is a registered 501c3 entity, and so I believe it would be qualified to have ownership. We would need to pretty quickly determine whether the board wanted to maintain any ownership, to Jeff's point, for the county's portion or not. That's not something that staff has contemplated it is something we often do in these circumstances, but it wasn't an ask that we heard from the board in previous conversations, and so we had not pursued that. But what we could do is authorize to get the grant application in and then bring back in a work session a conversation to really clarify these ownership questions and such between now and when a grant award might have to be appropriated. That's one way.
And the
to move
legal
forward.
use of the monies from that,
Yes,
the Parks
yeah.
Fund, has to be clarified.
Greg and then Francie?
I just wanted to say, the money we're putting toward this, the 200,000, we don't have to write that check until the last minute, if we know it's going to close.
No,
It's
we have
not-
to
we don't
write
have
it
to put
for the
that-
grant acceptance.
Do we have to write that
Restricted
check?
agree to it.
Right now, what you're doing is committing that if this project moves forward, if the grant is accepted, awarded, and the project moves forward, that you are committing to provide X amount of money, whatever the board approves. Right now, it's that full 25%, the 206.
It's 25% of $825,000.
Yeah, like 206,000 is the ask that's on the table. However, if the board chose not to that's not an official appropriation. So if the board chose not to appropriate, that's going to be subject to appropriation always by the state constitution. And so if the board found between now and that time that for some reason the project wasn't viable because we don't have the right ownership model, or you're not feeling like it's securitized enough with the historic district and the business plan, you could choose not to appropriate that, which would effectively send those grant dollars back to the historic, back to the grantor. Probably also damages some, I think the risk there is that's never good to get a reputation for doing that with a grantor. But you do have some checks and balances in here if you're comfortable that we can work these questions out.
So Francie?
I would like to proceed with this and have them be able to put in their grant application, and then we could clarify what's the best mechanism for ownership. We have plenty of time to do that, it sounds like. And I don't think there's been a lot of requests for museums or parks for our funds that would come out of these restricted funds. They can't be spent on anything else, right, John? They're restricted. to
Yeah, it's not like a general fund
Yeah.
request, so we
And
couldn't.
I don't know
I'd
if
like to-
museums
I'd like to
qualify under
proceed.
the Parks Fund.
Can I finish, please?
Sorry, but I was just clarifying
I'd
your
like
term
to
museum.
proceed with doing this. We've been talking about this for about a year now, trying to help make this happen. And I agree with Greg. I thought it was pretty clear that we were going to help towards the grant. And so, anyway, that's my feeling, and I hope we can get there.
Jeff, final comments, and then Patty.
Spiro, I was just going to say, the actual, with the donation by the owner, it's going to be $550,000. Wouldn't that be a basis for the match, or you got to go with the total? I mean, it's what we're looking for is 550,000 total. So we're very close if we have the grant in the county, and we've obviously built into it in our projections some funds for future operations, insurance, and things like that as we start developing new income streams. So, but 550, would that be in play, or is it 825?
So that's a bit of a tricky question, honestly, just because of the technicalities of where that money is going to first. And so I don't know if I'm prepared to answer
Okay.
whether History Colorado would accept that. I would think they would accept that as part of your local match contribution. I just can't say 100%, just because even when we were talking with the program contact about the funding arrangement for all of this, she was essentially like, I need to check with my legal team on whether this is all going to pencil out. So I don't know if I can give 100% a straight answer on that, unfortunately.
Okay.
So
No. I think what I'm hearing is that the 275,000 owner contribution would be taken out of the 825. So the cost of the project for the Historic Society would be 500 and whatever, 50,000. So we'd be paying 25% of 550. Wouldn't be paying 25% of 825 because
Yeah,
we'd be
that was my
reducing it
question
by-
to Spiro.
Yeah, that's something we need to clarify because that would make our contribution less if it's 25% of the cost of the project.
I mean, we're close and look.
We just need to figure that
Yeah, I'm
out.
sorry, but these are things that need to be discussed, but we're so close and the economics are unbeatable as far as, the acquisition, but I understand the little bumps here that we need to deal with, and I'm appreciative that you're willing to keep going.
And I think the only piece we need to look at there is, does it in any way jeopardize the tax benefit for the seller?
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. Plus,
And
we
you were
also.
gonna say your opinion, you haven't said anything.
Can I finish, Fancy?
Well, he said he was gonna go
Patty,
after
and then
me.
Patty, then I'll recognize myself.
So I think we need to clarify that. What is the cost? Does it include what the contribution is, or does it not? We need to figure that out, and then I'm comfortable with, if the board wants to move forward with, if we can use our parks fund for a museum purchase and the ownership issues and all of that. We have it on our agenda for tomorrow, and then its second reading is coming up. We can always continue the second reading, or we can make it more contingent upon if the project moves forward. So we can keep it moving, and that's kind of where I stand. Thanks, Jeffrey.
So likewise. So
Go ahead. I have a staff clarification after upon.
all yours.
I think I want to be clear. I'm not sure if we're going to get, based on what Spiro is saying, I don't know if we're going to get that clarification on the 550 or 825 by tomorrow. So I'm hearing two different things and want to clarify. Is the board committing to the 25% match of the grant or committing to the 200,000 of the challenge? Because I think that's two different pieces, and that would be helpful clarification for us moving forward.
Greg?
I just want to go back to what we discussed in the previous meeting, and that was a $200,000 challenge match. We were coming in first in order to try to generate enthusiastic response from the community. It wasn't a 25% of anything, it was a $200,000 match. Because we looked at the total price and looked like that's what we could do to really help you make this happen. I just want to make sure that's how I understood it. If we're going to change the deal, it seems a little disingenuous. I'm sorry, but I'm frustrated just because it seems like you could have been more. We could have had more ducks in a row before we had this presentation today. But I think we should stand by what we said. We know we don't have to put the money down. We're not going to be writing that check until close to closing, I'm assuming. It's going to be a couple months out. We're going to have a look at all of these questions, and possibly the money isn't as needed. But I'd like to keep us aligned with the commitment we already made, which I consider to be a commitment. We haven't done a resolution on it or anything yet, but this is how we teed the entire thing up with Spiro and everyone. So changing it now just doesn't seem right to me. So that's where I am, and I'd like to, if that gives you the clarity that that's how we were talking about it originally, and I'd like to continue in that note.
So I'm going to close out the conversation there's sort of three parts of the conversation. One is, again, there's confusion in the packet because, again, we have Susanna's note from 2024 with a dollar amount of 62.5. So there's the percentage of grant versus percentage of project. It's in the packet both ways. We need to clarify with Rye whether we're using the park dedication fees and it's applicable to purchase a building that's not or may house someone in it. And then I think we also heard sort of the operations and maintenance question of, future proofing this. And if we get the grant, do we still have enough money to actually maintain the building and who's running it? So there's a bunch of, I think those are the three subjects that we circled on. And Patty's going to get.
Really quick, yeah. I don't remember us committing to 200,000. I remember us asking them to set up a matching grant program, which hasn't been set up. Their information says they only need another 100,000, so we're pitching in a lot. So those are things I think we need to have clarified in order to move this forward. And this, again, first reading is tomorrow, so,
All right, Jeff, thanks for your time.
Yeah.
thanks, Jeff.
Will you be having the reading, or what do you think?
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
on our agenda.
Yes, we will.
So, I mean, I have
We
a,
just can't make we can't vote on it or anything
Sure,
today. So
okay.
we have to wait
So-
until tomorrow.
yeah,
So
can
this
I
is
visit
just
via
discussion.
Zoom or via your,
Yes,
that
sir.
way instead of, okay,
And we'll be able to talk about it again tomorrow.
okay, all right,
Excellent. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
thank you.
So does
Thanks
the,
for coming over.
does the board need a 5-minute break before Mr. Light?
That
Or,
would be great.
so, Jay, we're
And you
on,
will allow Jeff to have public comment tomorrow on first reading? Because generally we don't, but I think if he's gonna have more information for us, it'd be
Jeff,
important.
we would love for you to zoom in and we will take public comment from you tomorrow.
Okay.
as-
All right.
And Greg,
I just want to say, Carol, are you going to be working with Jeff in
Yeah.
the meantime? I want to make sure you come in ready to just.
Well,
knock this
if we
one
can
out.
get all this together.
So don't come
in
with
that
questions,
joint-
come with answers.
Yeah.
They'll have answers by tomorrow.
so Jay, we're on a
At noon.
5-minute break till
Yeah, I know. We'll see
3:30.
how it goes.
That
It is still the 25th of March. This is the work session for the Board of County Commissioners. We have Charlotte Anderson with us, and we have a series of the last two throws of citizen board interviews between now and April Fool's Day.
Exactly.
We have 3, don't we, today?
Well, the last 2 meetings, I think.
Oh,
Yes. So,
So confused.
we have Mr. Jim Light. You can come up here and sit. Or if that chair is more comfortable for you, that
this is
works too. Mr. Light is applying for a position on the Airport Advisory Board. And as you all know, we have several things happening on the Airport Advisory Board. We have 2 renewing members, which you all have already approved, Jackie and Meg. And then we have a regular resignation and an alternate resignation, which leaves Mr. Doremus moving from the alternate position to the regular position. And then we have the City of Aspen vacancy as well. So, Mr. Light is here to let you ask questions, and I'll turn it over to you.
So we would love to start with an intro to yourself, a little bit of your career in the Valley, related projects to the airport, but really open to you in terms of how you want to introduce yourself. And thank you.
Diane and I moved to Snowmass Village in 1978. We had a 5.5-year-old and a 3-month-old. She was kicking and screaming because we moved from Hilton Head, South Carolina, where you didn't need all the snow tires and snow suits for kids. At Hilton Head, my partner Jim Chafin and I had been trained in large-scale community development. We were very fortunate to work for a brilliant guy, Charles Fraser, who had 5,200 acres on Hilton Head, but it was family timber land that he saw the value as oceanfront real estate. So he had done all the hard work, by the way, with roads, water, sewer, 2 golf courses, hotel. And then I was brought on to be his assistant when we were starting the mixed-use project called Harbor Town, which has become pretty well known now because he built, among other things, a privately owned 90-foot lighthouse. And everybody said, what are you thinking about? But we got the Heritage Classic, which is now more than 50 years. I led the effort to get into tennis, but it was a big, growing, exciting time. And then we did projects at Amelia Island, Florida, 1,700 acres in Puerto Rico, where we lost 2/3 of our net worth, by the way. It was really tough to do business there. We were the contract development for Kiowa Island. But careful planning, environmentally based planning, a lot of research, and a focus on balancing resort and community. The company grew, got too much debt. I was asked to be president. I did led a workout that would have been the 3rd. We avoided the 3rd largest bankruptcy in the country at that time. But the company shrunk, and then Jim and I got an opportunity to buy 3,000 acres in Snowmass Village. It was kind of an off-the-market deal, and we were able to put the money together. So we moved here. We were in the county, and we had zoning that was very clear. It's been upheld in appellate court. But the town, newly incorporated town, wanted to annex us. We said, whoa, we know what we have in the county, but we don't like the plan. They said, well, we don't like the plan. So what was behind that led to the 1980 master plan. There was an emphasis on community, not just resort. It was then known, as some of you may recall, as Snowmass at Aspen. But it's all about being a resort. And we had the fundamental belief it wasn't going to be a good resort unless it could be a good community. So that's one whole chapter in our lives of replanning the Snowmass in a very cooperative way with the new town. So we did that for several years. We owned, by the way, the base village. We had a plan. It got shot down. It was much smaller than the one that came there, but that was our idea to create a base village. And there we were trying to balance the residential and the commercial demand. There are a number of things we did for the community there that I could go into if you like. Jim moved back to South Carolina to do Spring Island, which is the most unusual thing we've done. 3,000 acres, 400 homes, but it's a development within a park. Then I got involved with Jim Chafin, but we became the co-managing partner and the managing partner of the Roaring Fork Club. But I would say philosophically, we have had the view that we are not going to be successful in developing real estate without having a good, taking into account the issues and the needs of the community. And to that, we spent a lot of our time in nonprofits. So that's kind of part of our DNA of, and I could describe working with that, if you will.
Now,
So-
do you mind switching a little bit? So we as a community struggle with the balance between rural resort and community. And so you're applying for the airport board. Why now, I guess?
I was, 2 years ago, I was asked by Atlantic Aviation to consult with them. I told them I had no business connections. I knew some of the county commissioners, but not well. I didn't think I would add very much. And the first thing I did in my interview was show them Anderson Ranch, where we had gifted that land, and Jim and Betsy Chafin had raised most of the money, so they could see my interest in the community. So they retained me to work on the community benefit side, and I'm still working. I think this will probably be my last year, with the emphasis on housing. Through that process, I, as an individual, worked on the group that supported the expansion of the airport. I was extremely careful, and have been with everything I do with Atlantic, to keep their business separate from mine. And they knew I was working on that, and I raised some money and was involved with that. But that whole airport issue I thought, so important to our future collectively. But what I took away from that, I don't know if you all you still have probably the battle scars for all the work you all put in on it. But what I took away from that was kind of an optimistic view to see the coalition and others that came together, including, former elected officials, to say, this is important to us. And there was an example of getting the message out that I thought was so helpful. I came away thinking there's an opportunity with the terminal and other transportation issues that related to that, to build community around something that was once very controversial, and probably is still bitter with some, and some may not wish to participate. So I got interested more in the airport because of that process. I have a particular interest, if you want me to focus on that, is if this group with the right experts sat around the table and had nobody else come in the room, it wouldn't be an easy thing to do the program, to the budget, and do the schedule. That's, by the way, what we do in our development. You have the owners set the program, and you have in your management tools or your budget and the schedule. When you throw in the need for public input, which I've talked to Greg about, what you want a lot of, it's almost as if the BoCC or the AAB or someone needs to give a civics lesson. It's like, we want all the public input we can get, but we need it up front. There was a cartoon in the New Yorker some years ago. There's a house that's been framed up. There's a woman in the middle, obviously the client. The architect has the plans under his arm, and the contractor's there, and she's looking at the framed building. She said, "Oh, good, you've gotten it far enough along, I can start making changes." and I think that's, people come in at the last minute and say, "What are you thinking about?" when you've been trying to get their attention. If there's some way to figure out how to, I don't know if this is an AAB role or not, but to get the community thrilled about being involved,
but tell them you can't do it 6 or 12 months later. It doesn't work that way. So, at any rate, that's my particular interest in the Airport Advisory Board.
Thank you. Board questions?
No, you go.
And sorry, you had one
I
more
would just
comment.
one comment.
Please.
If any of this sounds like all this stuff was easy and fun, I could show scars on my back from things that didn't work as well as I wish they had.
Greg?
Oh, okay. Time commitment. It seems to me this is going to be a pretty robust and active group. Have you got the time to do it and the focus on?
I'm working with Atlantic on, and I think you know some about that. That's the only thing. I'm wrapping up two, from my point of view, significant fundraising things here shortly for a pre-collegiate program and for the Roy Ford Conservancy. So the answer is yes.
Great, thanks.
Patty, and
My question would be, and I think we should probably, would be if there's a conflict between your association with Atlantic. I'm looking at John Peacock. Well, I know it's not my legal counsel, but we'll pretend for now. Is there's a conflict between any of the activity that Mr. Light might be pursuing with Atlantic? I don't feel that there is, but I don't know what all is going on at that level.
It would probably be on a case by or issue by issue basis that we need to assess. Jim, my understanding of your association there is it's not a permanent association. You're providing them some advice right now on the.
It's sort of at the answer is yes. I contemplate it be this year, and I don't anticipate it be beyond that.
It's kind
And
of
it's
a
gonna
consulting on a
it
specific
has nothing to
issue.
do with their building or anything related to the airport. It's just my focus is on. No, I won't. I'll give you the outline that if you like, but my focus is on helping them raise a lot of money by getting the right team together and then implementing it in a smart way. But that's the outline of what I'm trying to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, I would just say, and John knew this. I was told the Atlantic was so strict. Do not talk to any county commissioners. Don't screw things up as you're bouncing around trying to tell them how good the ideas will be. We can get together. Do not do that. So, I've been.
We won't
they're
tell
very,
anybody.
They're very strict about that.
We won't tell anybody, but it's broadcasting live on Grassroots.
Well, I'll vouch for Jim. He did not do that. Shall I go?
Please, Francie.
Yeah, so we've never talked about the airport. It's interesting. I was sort of surprised when I saw your name here. I thought maybe it would come up somewhere else, but I'm thrilled that you're applying for this. And I think between your financial savvy and your understanding of the valley and the community and the importance of community, I think you'd be great. I am sort of wondering if you have one particular area of interest you'd like to work on if you made it onto the AAB. Like, is it the multimodal transportation? Is it the long-term goal of having some housing available for airport and people? Is it the terminal design? Do you have an area that is of more interest to you?
The area I'm interested in is the terminal design because I see these processes, public processes with competent administration still take so long to get done. And I think that if I were waving the magic wand, which no one can, it would be to have this group say, here's what we want in terms of program, budget, and schedule. So you're not saying, are we playing football or are we playing baseball? There are some guidelines about what is desired there. And is it going to be X, Y, or Z cost? Without some discipline, the projects become endless and way over budget. And that would be if we were in a stable cost environment, and we're currently not in it. So that would be my particular interest. The housing is what I'm doing with Atlantic.
Yeah. And so on the AAB, would you be helping to sort of drive that progress forward? Is that?
I don't honestly know how the AAB works well enough. I did go to one meeting over at the county when people were squawking about the airport expansion, and my observation, I was one of the youngest ones in the room.
That says a lot.
It bothered me. But so I hope there won't be that. You know, someone says it's near my house or whatever, or you know, don't worry, we're going to go back to flying the old planes. We don't want some strategic advice coming along when the county wants to go plan, budget, and
It'll
finance.
come. It'll come.
So that's my, Francie, my interest in what I've done professionally.
Okay, great.
So
Thanks, Jim.
I do think there's some intriguing ideas of linking the transportation. I think that's pretty exciting. Diane and I were in San Francisco and got in our first Waymo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and our son, you know, you get the app, and we got in, and it was fascinating to see that work. And I know these technologies are changing on transportation, so I hope there's something that will help relieve some of the traffic.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you for joining us. Any other wrap-up questions?
Did you have any?
I'd ask one if you don't.
Please.
Just only that, you know, I'm not sure, I'd love to hear your list of nonprofits and things you've been associated with, because you've done a hell of a lot in our community in the nonprofit sector, and I'm not sure people even know. It'd be great for the community to hear what you've been involved in, because I think about Anderson Ranch and Roaring Fork Conservancy. And
As part of our master plan, the 1980 master plan, we were required to deed property for affordable housing. The newly formed town had a housing authority and said, we don't have the staff, we don't have the skills, will you all build it? So we did that on a break-even fee basis. And Jim and I ended up guaranteeing the debt. We could not have paid it back, but the lender required it. And fortunately, it was a cooperative process. And the thing that we were pleased about it was we got it done on budget, on schedule, and we built more affordable housing that first year than had been built by the county in the previous 10 years. That was a volunteer effort to do that, not required. Anderson Ranch, we gave the land, but as importantly, Jim and Betsy Chafin were involved. My wife somewhat. We gave the land for the Snowmass Chapel. I was not part of that initial board, but was head of that board later for 25 years, and then back on the board recently. In Roaring Fork Club, we had a concept that originated from our work in Aspen and Snowmass of a real estate transfer assessment as distinguished from a tax. And we did use that to create a nonprofit called the Spring Island Trust, where we had 3,000 acres and about a third of it was put in the ownership of the trust. So we had a self-imposed transfer assessment on every sale, and then it transferred onto every subsequent sale. So we proposed that to the town of Basalt when we proposed our Roaring Fork Club. And there was some very interesting conversations around that, because no one could imagine that a developer was doing a nonprofit or environmental nonprofit. And I think the town saw it as having funds to hire a watchdog to look after us. And we were just observing that the town hadn't focused enough on their rivers. And so the town appointed two of the board members, we appointed two, which included me. And they said they've got this third one, that Bill Browning, who was the green development guy at RMI. It's like, we'll make sure these developers don't get out of control if we have Bill Browning. They didn't know that Bill Browning was writing a book on green development, and on the cover is going to be Spring Island. He loved what we were doing in South Carolina, but he changed our whole vision to be a watershed. We said, what? He said, the water comes into Basalt and goes out. You can't just focus on Basalt's riverfront. Anyway, so those are the main ones. I've been, Diane and I mentored 11 kids in the pre-collegiate program, which is in the school district of Basalt, Carbondale, and Glenwood Springs. That was a fantastic experience. We had 11 kids, and we lost one. We had 12, and we lost one. The family moved back to Mexico, but that involvement led to me being on the board now. I've been head of that board, and I'm leading and I hope shortly completing, to Greg's question, broadening their fundraising base through a challenge grant. So those are the main ones. Now, we contribute to others as well.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it. I didn't know all that.
It's nice to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Happy to be here.
Thanks, Jim.
And when will we know?
Thanks, Jim.
When's,
Thank you.
when's our decision?
April 1.
April 1. Well, you'll know on April Fool's Day.
April 1st is when we
I
hope
thought
to
it was
have
the
decisions.
9th.
Was that?
Don't we have more I thought it was the 9th.
Mr. Marks, you're the next
One more
contestant.
that's come along that we're not going to include.
'Cause the city won't have their decision until the 8th.
Okay, well,
We'll talk about it.
hi, Evan.
Hi, Charlotte.
So the next applicant for the Airport Advisory Board as well is Evan Marks, who you're all familiar with, I'm sure.
Hello. Jeff,
Welcome.
nice to meet you.
Likewise. Thank you
Good
so
to
much.
see
Thanks for joining us.
everyone else here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
You're welcome to tell a story. You're welcome to,
Well-
introduce yourself. You can take, something Greg
Well,
doesn't
the first thing that
know.
I'll say is that even at my own expense, the board would be foolish to deny themselves of Jim Light's expertise. Full stop. He's a treasure. He's got a vast reservoir of experience and wisdom. So I think that should be, he should be at the top of your list. With respect to my name on the list, as I mentioned in my application, I really don't think I need a vote. And that's why I was perfectly happy to be considered for an alternate or as a member, the City of Aspen's ex officio representative. And that's because if I can't convince people on the AAB of the merits of my argument by sharing my ideas with them, then it's probably pretty unlikely that I'm going to be, the decisive vote in anything that the Airport Advisory Board is going to recommend to the commissioners. I did have an interview yesterday with the city. I'm not sure what the results will be. I'm told that they're going to vote on it today. John says I've already been rejected, so.
No, I talked to the
But,
mayor
he
this
was
morning.
doing
They're
one of
not voting
these. I
on
was
it
trying to
today.
get the thumbs up, the sideways, the thumbs down from him. I didn't detect the proper rotation, the supination of his wrist upwards, but we'll see how that goes. A couple of things, I guess, Jeff. We haven't really had a chance to meet or spend any time in person, but I'm also on the Financial Advisory Board, and I tried to do everything that I could to assist the board in the first instance, this board, and getting the FAB to recommend the FBO lease, to a lesser extent the ALP. I had a lot of knowledge of what was going on with Atlantic Aviation because I was, I think, the only, I don't think it was intended this way, but I was the only private sector individual on the FBO Operator Selection Committee. I think Rich Engelhardt, thought that it was a good idea that I at least represent the FAB in the context of assisting the other staff members that were on the committee and their deliberations. And then subsequent to the selection, I tried to do everything that I could to help staff with, some of the fine tuning of the lease, particularly on some aspects that might be considered to be inside baseball for, a $2 billion lease transaction. With respect to my role in on the AAB, to the extent that I represent the city, there's one focus that I would probably have, which is, I think, important, and that is the multimodal ground transportation hub. It's a lot of gibberish, but I think it really is important considering that nobody takes RAFTA between the core and the airport. And with respect to that, going back, how many years ago was the Vision Committee started? 7, maybe? going back 7 years, I was put on, when I applied to the Vision Committee, I applied for, the Vision Committee. And lo and behold, nobody saw the wisdom of putting me on the Vision Committee. So along with about 60 other orphans that they couldn't figure out what to do with, they put me on the focus group, which was, I used to joke around with Rich, who I hope has some sort of legacy involvement on this because I really enjoy working with him. But I said, well, this vision group is like visionless, and it has no vision, and it certainly has no focus. So I used to joke around with him, this is the non-focus group. So working with Rich, and I'm going to make a bold claim here, okay? I consider myself the intellectual godfather of that mumbo-jumbo, multimodal ground transportation hub, because I suggested to Rich, and he took the bait, that the focus committee gets a focus, and the focus should be ground transportation. And I think that was a good move, because otherwise we were just an appendage to the visioning process that was really going nowhere. And because of that focus, I felt obliged to educate myself on multimodal ground transportation hubs, and I actually looked at the Oculus in New York that was built around the New World Trade Center, the Anaheim Regional Center, which was actually very good, Transbay in San Francisco. Not that these things would have, these large complexes would have anything that's, that would be immediately, obviously relevant to Aspen, but they all had certain common characteristics in terms of good wayfinding and convenience, so that they would whiz the passengers from with a great amount of fluidity to their destination. In so doing, I identified a couple of financing packages because I sort of got the sense that you would need to finance it. And most recently, I discussed it with Ann Driggers that she should dig up her TIFIA files. TIFIA is the Transportation Infrastructure Finance Innovation Act, which permits the borrowers to, either through credit support or a direct lending program, to get 35-year money reasonably, at reasonable prices. But it's only up to 49% of a project. So if we were to go out and look at TIFIA for the transportation hub component of the terminal development, it would only be for 49%. Now, you might be able to play a few interesting games with respect to what does that footprint involve, and does it contain, for instance, the luggage carousels in the back. So you may be able to finance more than 49% if there's a certain common element in the footprint that could be considered appropriate for the multimodal transportation hub, but still be part of the base building of the terminal. But all that stuff has to be looked at. So one of my concerns is that because this project is going to be challenged in terms of procuring enough dollars to make it happen, I think that it's really just sort of all hands on deck, and everybody has to keep an open mind as to how it might get financed, because the budget, which I'm not going to disclose what I think it's going to cost, but I think that we're going to have to be very, very resourceful, and I think I can contribute to that. But in order for me to contribute to that, I think I have to be on the Airport Advisory Board, not seeing it second or third hand from the Financial Advisory Board, from my position at the Financial Advisory Board. Particularly if I'm called on to, or I volunteer, as I did during the public process to get 1C approved. I don't want to be put in a position where I'm asked at the last minute to help engineer a fab endorsement of a project or a financing that I'm seeing second or third hand. So I really would like to be at the epicenter of the idea generation and the creation of whatever financial engineering is going to go into the terminal. And I think I've expressed this to you, John, but maybe not to any commissioners. So that's sort of important to me.
Yeah, you did to me.
And I did to you as well, Francie, that's correct.
So, Evan, we've got Patty, and then think about the back of your mind which architect you're really going to pick. So we're coming back to that. Patty first.
I don't think
Okay.
we can disclose that. But that being said, Evan and I have talked about the airport a lot over the
Yep,
past
we certainly have.
year, 2, 10, 20. And I know your time commitment. I know you're available to be on the AAB, which you bring a great perspective. I just sent a text to the mayor, to Tory. I talked with him this morning, and he said they were going to decide next week or the 8th or something to city. So I just sent him a text. I just got a return. He said that they're still thinking about it.
Okay.
They're open what?
The city is still thinking about their
So,
appointment.
so seriously, though, Foster, Piano, or Geary?
Yeah, okay, so here's the thing. As I mentioned in my application, I like all of those architects. They're friggin' brilliant. I mean, and they're going to create the Aspenization of the terminal that will be iconic for the next 50 or 100 years. Frankly, if any one of them designs it, they're going to be landmarks, and you'll never tear it down. You'll only sort of build adjacent to it.
But we're in the RFP process for that, aren't we, John? So we really can't discuss.
It was an
But-
opinion. It was an opinion
but
question.
there-
It's-
but-
it's in his application.
But there's an issue which I mentioned in my application, which I think is, really on point. These guys designed things, and Jim would be the first. Is Jim still here?
No, he snuck out.
Jim will tell you that these guys design stuff that is unaffordable, however brilliant, and you really need to have a second architect, which is the more proletarian role. It's called a production architect, who will take a Frank Gehry vision and then translate it into working drawings that are practical, which can be bid out, which can be submitted to contractors for multiple bids. So I think that to a certain extent, by sending out an RFQ, which I think will probably be picked up by a lot of architects, because it's very prestigious to design the Aspen-Pitkin County commercial terminal, because everybody's going to see it. At least the 60 billionaires that fly over it en route to the Atlantic Aviation new FBO terminal. I think that we should also, on very close order, closely thereafter, get an RFQ for production architects and have them list their experience in working with lead design architects around the world.
Does Frank Gehry still get the credit?
Oh, yeah, he still gets full credit. And in fact, you're going to have a big negotiation with him as to who's going to own the plans to the terminal, because that's always like a thicky wicket, in architect contracts.
I've got a comment.
Please.
Well, clearly you would be a bonus to us with financial advice and as a financial engineer. And I've never heard that expression before.
Oh, sorry.
I like it.
It's a little dated, so.
I like it.
Don't worry about it.
I think we could use a financial engineer. And it'll be interesting to see what Aspen decides. But what I'm hearing from you is that if you're not on the AAB, you feel that the Financial Advisory Board is too far removed, or perhaps the last to hear. And so you don't want your advice to come from that role. What if you were, for instance, the head of a subgroup that was finances?
Yeah, listen, that would be fine, Francie. As I said, I specifically carved out sort of other opportunities for myself in interviewing for this position, like the ex officio role or the alternate role, in order to sort of have a foothold on the board
Okay.
without a vote,
Okay, I
which
understand.
I've already expressed is not essential from my point of view.
You're not saying that you will withdraw your help if you're not appointed to the board, but you would strongly
Yes.
prefer to be on the board.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good way to put it.
One other thing, as long as I'm here in front of all of these decision makers, it's too bad Kelly isn't here, but I'm sure she'll
watch it.
She'll watch it. So this is to you, Kelly. You know, I think you better keep gates 7 and 8 shovel ready, okay? Because you're going to need them before you know it. In fact, you probably need them now. So I'm going to just say that to you, Kelly, with all due respect and appreciation for the spirit in which you've embodied, you've imbued into the common ground recommendation. But just 2 weeks ago, I had friends that were like sitting on the tarmac for an hour and 45 minutes, and there were open American gates, open United gates, but their American Airlines flight from LA couldn't use them because, you know, and if you just had 2 overflow gates, they would have been in a high mountain taxi to my house in 5 minutes after disembarkation.
I have a friend who works for American who couldn't leave because her plane hadn't deplaned yet,
Okay.
even though her hours were well
Yeah,
up.
so, I mean, it's, and, you know, if you're gonna finance it, you know, you might as well just do it all at once, so.
Additional
You're
questions?
gonna need it anyway.
Additional questions for Evan?
Concerns. Obviously, you're very, tuned in and bright, and you'd be an asset to any team. There's no question about that. I'm concerned that you're on a very powerful board already, and if we put you on another very powerful and influential board, you're kind of approaching the point where I'd prefer you were an elected official.
No.
And I'm a little nervous about that. And so I'm wondering, would you be willing to resign the FAB in order to go on this, or take one or the other? Perhaps there's a liaison role, but I'm nervous about that, and I brought it up with other people as well. And then the second question I have is, have you made any bad decisions in the last recently? You can share with us. Have you regretted anything?
Of my decisions.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I probably should have been more dominant in telling you guys to assert your role during the whole elongated public process that led to the dissipation of the bipartisan infrastructure funds. You should have just, I think, all manned up and just pushed this thing through. Sort of what Jim was talking about before. So, you get the public process after you've sort of stirred the pot on the design, and then you open up the public process and leave yourself open for revisions. I think that you guys have a tremendous responsibility, and democracy and listen, don't accuse me of being Trumpian or anything, but sometimes an elected official just has to make a decision and push it forward, and regardless of the consequences. And I think that extra year to 18 months that we were struggling with the decision, led to a diminution in the opportunity to get the commercial terminal financed. So that's where I think I could have been more forceful in expressing that opinion. And I probably would not have done it in public. I probably would have done it individually among the then sitting 5 commissioners when Steve was here, before Jeff arrived. And I feel that was a mistake. And now I feel that given where, the cost of this public infrastructure asset is going to probably settle out, if we're not going to make any compromises, like cutting back on the multimodal ground transportation hub, which will be a very tempting target for someone who wants to cut a budget, because you can cut tens of millions of dollars out of it just for that, then I think we have to be open-minded about some of the financings. I think, I'm going to probably speak to John about, financial advisor to sit with Recondo. I think there could be others that could work alongside Recondo. I don't know if you're going to do another RFQ for new financial advisors, but I would encourage you to talk to Bank of America, which I think has a 45% market share in airport municipal finance. I think we should probably talk to KKR, who's already half here because they own, most of Atlantic Aviation, about a public-private partnership with the commercial terminal. So the due diligence will be very easy for them, and they could probably make a fast decision. I think we should dig up the TIFIA funding, which may still have funds sloshing around in it, Patty, apart from, whatever other FAA grants are available. But, the delay, I think, cost us we'll get the thing financed, but it's going to be a lot more complicated now than it's been before. And I think that there's probably going to be a high yield component to whatever the revenue financing is going to be. I mean, maybe it's going to be hypothecated as opposed to revenue. I have no idea. But, I think that, as they say, all options should be on the table,
Carefully.
It's funny, I'm reviewing a municipal advisor RFP right now as we said, so.
Final remarks before we move to Suzanne Caskey.
Yeah, I was serious about Jim. I can make my opinions known probably regardless of whether or not I'm on the board, but Jim is like a real treasure, and you should put him at the top of your list. He's just wonderful.
So that's a really magnanimous way to end your interview.
So,
Thanks for joining
Thanks,
us.
Evan. Good to see you.
okay, guys, it's nice to see everybody again.
Wonderful to have the conversation.
Thank you.
Evan.
Bye, Evan.
Interesting.
During the negotiations.
So, and our
April 9th, April 1st.
It is April 1st. I told the mayor I thought it was after the city.
What's April 1st?
When we're gonna discuss our appointments, the city was not discussing them tonight, was my understanding. So I think they're waiting to see what we do. And I was waiting to see what
They do. Mm-hmm.
So maybe we should, I don't know.
Do what we do.
Hi, Suzanne.
Let's do what we do.
Hi, hi.
I don't think you need an introduction, but Suzanne Caskey, interviewing for a renewal position. There's 3 renewals on the board. Wait, you say all this.
It's okay. Yes, we have 3 renewing members, and Suzanne is the last one to be interviewed. And then we have 4 new applications, and 1 position.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So you've served on the Citizens Growth Advisory Committee. You've been the chair of Planning and
Well,
Zoning.
I was a representative from P&Z. I was an observer.
Yeah.
So I had to be, I was not to express my opinions or try to direct the way things went. And so I became creative in asking questions.
We are not surprised.
I see.
Suzanne's looking over your shoulder, by the way, so.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well played.
Yeah, it's good to see all of you again, and I'm sorry not to see Kelly. So you know what I'm here for. What do you want to hear from me?
So Patty's going to start us off.
I have to say that in reading what you wrote to us in your application, you pretty much say it all, and you say it all well. I love it when you bring up the word climate change a lot, and I wish we could use that word, but the federal government is asking us not to use that word anymore.
Is that recent? I
Yeah,
didn't
they're
know
kind
that.
of looking at anything we do with
Suggesting county
through
policy
a
change.
lens.
That
of
makes me
words we
feel
can use,
like a
but
teenager.
Your application was pretty much saying the reason why you want to continue on this wonderful journey with P&Z.
Yes.
And I think that's what you need to do.
Thank you.
That's
I
my
hope
question
it turns
without a
out that
question.
way. Thank you. Thank you, Patty.
So maybe you can touch on how the growth advisory work translates into your work on 2050 and how that's going so far.
Quite well. I think I'm such a fan of the planning staff, have been in the past and certainly am now. They are, it's hard to know, is one of the chicken and egg sorts of questions of, because we are a place that exhibits quality, is that the way we attract quality and talent and the ability to present sometimes confusing and very layered problems to the community and help them find their way through it. I want to, so as we're being updated, I'm also going, apparently the board, you ask for P&Z members to volunteer to sit in on the comprehensive planning now. And I was very interested in doing that and have tried to do so. That the latest update for the P&Z, I was not able to attend. That was just in the past week. But there are people like you and people like me who seem to find this a sort of mother's milk to stay involved with the community in ways that seem to count. And there was a meeting in Glenwood Springs, I bet it was 20 years ago or so, and it involved not only Pitkin County but other surrounding counties. And one of the things that came out of that was that people who moved to Pitkin County, when they were asked, do you feel like what you do, what you say, the way you act for your community makes a difference? And everybody said yes. And I'm so happy to say that that's still the case, that I was fortunate enough to move to a community that I knew acted on its values, and that was in the late 70s. That was the thing that drew me and my late husband. I see that still now. I mean, even with the comprehensive planning and with the growth, I never can remember the CGAC, with that particular group, you know, a rock bottom, bedrock, solid basis for their decisions was started off with what we value, what we want more of, and what we want less of. And that was one of the very exciting nights, and it was early on in their meetings. So now that I watched that group, and I thank you again for going through the process. I think you interviewed over 90 people for that group, and I think that there were maybe 29, 26 that were serving. They never wavered. I mean, you know, they thought they were going to meet for a fairly short period of time. I think it was 6 months or so. And then the meetings grew longer. Each meeting grew longer. So we had to say, okay, we need to plan to meet longer, and we need to plan to meet more often. And I'm saying we, I wasn't one of them. You know, I was privileged to be able to observe that. But nobody ever balked. Nobody ever groaned. It enriched my life to see that, and it gave and it gives me hope for. We're seeing, and we are seeing chaos at the federal level, but here there's consternation and there are hard decisions to make, but to see people show up, I mean, the people that I saw today show up and want to help do what you're doing and what I'm doing. And so I really want to be a part of this, I want to be named to P&Z again, because it would make me cry if I, it would make me cry in public. If
I cry in
I,
public all the time.
if I could not be an active part of seeing what the CGAC did ongoing, and being a part of the community plan, which is a part of, it's all woven together. So I really want to do it. I love the discussion of, in every meeting, no matter what the application is, it still, to me, gets back to what we value, not just what we say we value, what we wish we valued, but what we really do value. And I have loved since the beginning, when I was on P&Z before, having to grapple with, I think we used to have to grapple more with what's the truth in this application. I see less of that now. I see people being more straightforward, and that's probably because the county requires that sort of straightforwardness when an application comes forward. But it always still feels to me like a discussion of values, and trying to stay in line with those. So if I'm not appointed, I'm still going to be there. I just
Crying.
cannot. Yeah, just quietly in the back, just sort of mewing.
Suzanne quietly in the back.
Questions for Suzanne?
No, I'm good.
Greg?
Well, yeah, whether you cry or not is not that important to me, but I do know you contribute a hell of a lot, and you have a real strong sense of our community values. What I'd love to know is, where's the disconnect between what you're all talking about and doing and how you see the county actually moving or things happening in the community?
I don't see a disconnect.
I mean, is it all going the way, are we adhering to the values? Are we, as a community, just following the letter of the, I'm just wondering, you ever get frustrated?
Yes. Yeah, I was frustrated. I have been frustrated in the past. Now I'm heartened, especially because of the CGAC process. And I'm heartened every time we on P&Z are updated by what you are supporting, what you're saying, the way you're voting, and in this particular case, at this time, that means to me the CGAC report, that you have not yet, and I don't expect you to, shrunk from, okay, we ask you to do it, CGAC, and now you've come through with this complex, creative, amazing product, and you're not saying, wait a minute, we didn't mean that. We don't want you to be that bold. And they were bold, and what I see is that you're backing them up, and I hope you will continue to.
Thanks for that. I just remember going to a meeting, I think with John and Kara, where the CGAC really was asking us if we were going to follow through. And
It was here.
my job was to assure them. It was in Basalt, actually.
Well, we had one here when they
It
asked
was in
us.
Basalt, and I remember
Had a few of those.
yeah. And my job, specifically as instructed from Kara and John, was tell them that we're going to back them up.
Yeah, yes.
And I just wanted to make sure. I was wondering if you all felt that way.
Well, since I'm not them, I'm not that group, and so I don't get to see them as much as I did when they were actively meeting, but I do run into people like Johnny McBride, young John McBride, and I see Cindy, and run into other people who were on that committee, and they say to me, they ask me, how's that coming along now? Or are we still paying attention? I don't want it to just fly off into the mist. And I'm happy each time to be able to say, I don't think that the commissioners are going to back down from you. And I don't see the members of the P&Z questioning that. I see them strongly representing it. So we just have to keep doing it until it gets done. I'm just so happy that you created the group in the first place.
It's a great group.
Thanks
I
for
happen
that.
to see one of those members quite often myself.
You do?
My son.
Oh, of course, yes, of course.
So we catch up on it quite a bit.
And can you say
he
how,
still talks
how
about
he's
it
feeling?
in the kind of terms that you talk about it.
Yeah.
He was pretty amazed by
Yes.
it. But yeah, they're going to hold our feet to the fire.
Yeah, that's good. And I haven't seen yet, and I don't expect you to flinch from that. And just as an aside, I just have to say that we, the P&Z, are still smarting that you started dating other people. But
We'll loan him back to you.
we miss you. Okay, do.
Yeah, we'll invite you to the parties.
Do. Yeah.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
I
Suzanne.
appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Suzanne. Thanks so much.
Yes, we miss you.
And we're not giving him back to you. Well, maybe, I don't know. It's up in the air.
Yeah,
these
we'd
days,
send
maybe.
him back.
Wonderful to see you.
Thank you. Thanks, all of
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Don't they have a meeting tonight?
So,
They're in the five.
So are Jasmine and Zach, are they?
They interviewed last week.
Oh, they did. I missed it. I'll have to watch it.
Yeah, and I'll have those links when I bring you all the decisions. And that's something that you all can make a decision if you want me to bring everything on the first, or everything minus the AAB, or if you want me to wait until the
What are the other
night.
2 interviews we have, though? We have 2.
so
We have more AAB.
So we have 2 more interviews on the 8th.
On the first.
I'm sorry, on the 1st.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Who's that?
And actually, Jack Cohen was one that I think we wanted to talk about. Do you want to interview him
I
again?
think we decided not to interview.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I think the board feels like they have a good understanding of what we're doing.
Because he's interviewing for both the AAB and PNC.
Correct.
And he's
He's on the
finished up
FAB.
FAB. He's retiring from the FAB.
He's not on. Is he on the FAB, Jack?
I thought he was.
No,
He was. He was.
I
Wait,
thought he was.
I'd
Yeah.
have to go back and look.
And I think
he
he's
is.
retiring. He said it was boring. He wanted to do something more exciting.
I thought we were talking about putting him on, but I don't know.
Oh, we should find that out. That makes me nervous when, you know.
I don't have a problem with people
he's
being on
leaving
2
the
boards.
FAB.
We've been doing it for a long time, and I've never seen it become an issue.
So the board and future agendas said on April 1st we would strike Jack Cohn, that we would still interview Eric Helm. He is the last one, and he's the Citizen Grant Review Committee.
He's a different
Correct.
committee.
So, what was I going to ask?
So the answer is we should have a citizen board discussion on the 1st that would include the AAB.
Or we can decide right now on P&Z, couldn't we? We've interviewed everybody.
I
Haven't
mean,
seen
for
them.
renewals.
Oh, you haven't seen him yet. Francie hasn't watched him. Good point.
Yeah,
I
and you may want a full board for
Yeah,
that
right.
conversation.
I was just trying to.
And did Ann Mullins interview last week? too?
And
Yes.
Mullins did as
Yeah, I
well.
better watch it.
There were 4 interviews, I think.
Okay,
so.
thank you.
I'll have the
We
links.
talked about the Stoics during Ann Mullins' interview.
Oh,
so
did you?
We got that in. Yes.
Okay, so then I will.
And that's
come back on
AAB.
the
She's
first.
AAB.
She's interviewing for AAB.
Oh, you have so many
Thank
good
you so much,
candidates.
Charlotte.
Thank you.
So we have
Charlotte?
Horrible.
for Jay, and we've got 2 more items still. I'm looking at the future agenda. Sorry, we have 2 more items this evening. An update from Greg on committee assignments.
Already did that.
He did it. You didn't.
I gave you the
I'm the
30-second
only?
one.
Just
Oh, you did the 50-second one. You did the 20-second
And
one.
we want you to beat
So-
his record and do a 40-second.
So we have
Yeah,
one
me too.
more.
Exactly.
One more update. I think we covered Northwest Cog. There was additional notes I took on federal lands. We could discuss that. But I also had the joy of attending the Colorado roundtable yesterday in Glenwood. Healthy Rivers was awarded $100,000, so thank you to Lisa Tasker and Lisa McDonald, and the engineers at LRE. The ask, I think, was $150,000. The feedback from the Colorado.
I have no idea what LRE is.
It's the
it's
name of the water company. that's-
engineering company that did the water study for Lincoln Creek.
Okay.
And so the request was for, it's a $280,000 contract, which is the follow-on engineering to the Lincoln Creek study that showed the deposition and release of heavy metals, including copper. And so the feedback from the roundtable is, here's $100,000. What we really want to do is get to an implementation phase and out of a study phase. But go ahead and do the study at this point.
Okay.
So that's good news for Healthy Rivers and an endorsement from the roundtable. So some of the interesting takeaways on the Seven River process was still negotiations between upper and lower basins in terms of the agreement in the 7 states. So they have a reduction in the lowers, which is 1.5 million acre feet. And I don't need to break that out for you, but that's still ongoing. James Heath talked about measurement rules. He's our division engineer. His other takeaway was USGIS is fully operational in the western slope, so that was good news. I think some of the concerns we had was around weather stations, et cetera. So all the gauges that are in place are working.
Will continue to work.
So, and his point was, we're ready to take on measuring for the hydrographers as needed, and that's as per the state division engineer. So that's good news. Brendan, who is the Colorado hydrologist, this is the scary news. Lake Powell is at 32%. Meade is at a disastrous number, and Blue Mesa is at 61%. The good news is on the snow water equivalent, Colorado's at 102%, but we continue to see dry spots in the south. So last time it was south and west, the last meeting, but it's a continuation sort of that trend. So soil moisture, drier going west, and pretty dry and warm up there. So it's, I don't have good news on that front. There is an atmospheric river potentially for this weekend, so that might help our numbers. And then we did talk about in-stream flows, and Zane gave a legislative update, but I think we did enough legislation earlier this morning.
Yeah.
And there's nothing from Zane's standpoint, he thinks it's the easiest year in terms of water at the state level. So, yeah, that's the quick basin update. And we got kudos from Ken Ransford for being there and being there in force, because there were 3 of us yesterday from Pitkin County, so they really like seeing us at the table. The only other county commissioner is JJ from Mesa County, who's really been amicable and friendly, just enjoyable. And so it's, thank you for allowing me to eavesdrop on that presentation. So anything else? Any other business? Yeah, JJ is probably the new Mesa commissioner.
Yeah, I have not.
Don't know. You know?
I don't,
Oh.
actually. I'm far enough removed now.
Right, yeah, it's been so long. Yeah,
Any other business?
can't think of any.
I do have just something. We have scheduled time, I think when Kelly's back, to discuss the newly formed or in process of forming Coalition for Transportation.
What? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
We are in the process of discussing the newly forming Coalition for Transportation.
Coalition for Transportation, thank you.
Going to discuss.
We're going to discuss it. I just want to make sure we reserve time when all 5 of us are here, so that none of us jump on board with it till we have a discussion as a board and how we.
This is related to John and George
Mm-hmm.
and Bill Guth.
I don't know if he's on it or not.
Is it related to his
No,
recommendation?
this is John and George. This is a whole
Yeah.
different thing than what.
No, I know, I'm just wondering if there's been an outreach to Bill Guth about this.
I don't know. I'm not in charge.
I'm not either.
So what I'm
John has something
So
to
what
say
I'm hearing
about
is
it.
we will wait for Kelly to return in order to have an overall conversation. I think we've sort of tried to start the conversation twice, but we'll wait for next week when we have a full board.
Yeah, and I'll just let the board know that there are multiple conversations happening, and I am trying to talk to each of the different players right now to see if there's some way to bring those conversations together, because I think that's been our challenge, right?
Yeah.
Is we have multiple efforts that come to different conclusions, and then it makes it difficult to move forward.
And I did follow up and call George and tell him that we would have a discussion as a 5-member board.
So, in closing, so tomorrow we start at noon for the regular meeting. There's a 10 o'clock QQ. I will join from the office if you want to
A
spend
10 o'clock what?
10 o'clock
Oh,
Northwest
QQ you said?
QQ. I will take that with Greg, potentially from the office at 10, maybe in Rye's office or something. And then beyond that, from 10 to 2, leave them for lunch. And I met your colleague from Summit County, Anita? Nina, yeah,
Right,
the
chair.
Summit County Commissioner.
Right.
So, and she's also in the Colorado River Roundtable.
She's a river guide and gone a lot. I don't even know if she's in the country. She may be in Costa Rica or something. So,
John,
They haven't asked me to
Francie,
come and
Patty,
pinch hit, though.
anything else, anything we did not discuss? Rosa? Rosa, you want to make a motion to adjourn? We don't need to adjourn. It's a work session.
All right, we can just say bye. See you tomorrow.
Enjoy your evening. Jay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
and,
you, Grassroots.
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thanks,
Good job.
Jeffrey.
Well done.